You guys are the kids who went away.
That's awake as we're going to be.
Just keep nodding and
That's
you'll be
right.
fine.
Yes, yes.
Nobody ever closed.
10, 1, 3.
Yeah, that's probably a good assumption.
We get some,
John, you're getting a thumbs up from the lady there.
we're gonna wait for Betsy. So,
And then I gotta wake back up again, like someone's around me. So I just like start doing that.
Hello.
good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Board, October 25th, 2017. In conformance with the state of Massachusetts open meeting laws, our meeting is being audio and videotaped tonight. First on the agenda, we have a continued public hearing for 18 Union Street, and we see the folks are all set. Hopefully, most people in the audience, if you're looking at this plan, you are welcome to come up and get a better view on the side if you like, but you got a set of plans for us here, Rick? Just open it up to the most pertinent page, okay?
Page 3 and page 4. We'll start with page 3, which is the layout page.
Okay.
We actually have some 1 by 17s for the board members.
Oh, very good.
You're the best.
Thank you.
So you have one?
Thank you.
Yep. We have an alternate sketch, so I'm just gonna open that up while I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'll be going through that. And the presentation, so I'll start this under.
Is that for the alternative entrance?
That's part of this set.
Okay.
We have that pedestrian connection that we're gonna go over.
Thank you.
Okay. You've got the report from our consulting engineers. You've reviewed that?
You want that, John?
Yeah, so what I would like to do is I would like to,
There's one underneath.
Got it.
right,
Yep,
right.
Yep.
I'd like to go over the open items, confine it to, I think there's probably 7 or 8 items that we still have.
Mr. Chairman, could I just follow up on a couple of record-keeping items
Sure,
before we
yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
For the record, my name's Thomas DePlacido with Four Oaks Corporation, and with me here tonight is Rick Goodrow from United Consultants and Jason Miller from Bowler Engineering to discuss landscape architecture with this a little bit. But a follow-up on a couple of items for the board here tonight is This was emailed over to the office today, but just a letter, a hard copy from Green International. And this was just for the internal turning radius of the ladder truck. It was discussed at the last meeting, but just so that there's something in writing that verifies that. We also,
Sent us that.
also, I don't know if the board has this or not, but we were able to get a confirmation from the building inspector on parking spaces that were required. And this is an email to our architect verifying the square footage and what's required under zoning. And basically, there's 27 spaces that would be required and 1 handicap space that he's asking for as well. So just a letter here, his email confirming that.
And you're providing how many?
I believe there's 28, Rick, and 2 handicap on that. So with that, there's one other important item, too, I'd like to bring up, is that through a lot of the discussions and going through engineering and everything, it came to our attention a couple of weeks ago that actually the adjacent property on Union Street, going down Union Street. It's very small right here, but we were able to actually get a certified zoning map from the town clerk. And what we thought was actually a residentially zoned property actually turns out to be commercial, even though there's a residential house on it. So this is up to the board, but we feel as though that we may not need that waiver request now on certain landscape setbacks and buffers that we asked for under the site plan approval for I-4B1C. And also, it will probably relieve us from going to the ZBA as well. So,
I confirmed that with the assessors myself. I actually talked to the lady that lived in that property years ago, grew up in Norfolk, and that always has been zoned commercial. I'm surprised that wasn't caught before this.
yep.
But that being said, that takes away the requirements for budding a residential zone.
That is correct, and I also did have some discussions with the neighbors. I actually gave them a traffic report that we had done with traffic counts and everything, as well as the information about their lot being commercial now, which I think they were pleasantly surprised about because it does open up a lot more opportunities for them in the future with that.
I know.
So it's just that record keeping and
Right.
sort of things.
Thank you.
I don't know if you'd want to turn it over to your consultant or first or to Rick.
Rick, do you have something to say, or would you like the consultant and you to go over the outstanding comments? Do you have anything to offer towards those comments before we get started?
What I'd like to do is just give the board a little update on a concept that we came up with based on comments that were received from the board at the last hearing. Now that
He's
Betsy
got it going.
has the whiteboard working, I guess I can
Good job,
Betsy,
Betsy.
yeah, all right, Betsy.
say she even has a zoning map up. We didn't need that either.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't realize that.
Am I bold if I ask you to blow it up?
Could you switch to the other?
There you go.
Nope, the plan you were just on, but the other page, I think there's 2 pages.
Oh, yeah, yep.
For that one, Betsy. This one. So, the minor changes we've made were in this area here, where we previously had 2 handicap parking spaces in an offloading area. Those have been relocated over here. These are now 3 conventional parking spaces, and the reason for that was to utilize the offloading area to create a stairway connection to the town hall property from this site. Additionally, we've proposed a walkway to be constructed here, running up along the driveway for the town hall property. So those are the minor little changes that we've made. Jason's done some landscape concepts for that, and he'd like to show those to the board as well. Other than that, I think we could go through the review letter.
Very good.
This time.
Phil, why don't you hit us with the major outstanding issues, and we can get Rick's response on that, okay?
Okay.
Right here.
For the record, Phil Paradis with Beta Group. We've been asked to peer review this project. So we provided initial peer review. The applicant and the engineer has provided a response and updated plans. And I think there was, so I think we're waiting for a couple more things, but, so we got a chance to look at it. There's a few additional waivers as well as a few waivers that are being taken off because of the changes.
Right.
The most notable is that the design has been changed to include infiltration system to retain the stormwater on site, which will now meet the requirement of the bylaws. And he's also done a brief report, I guess, on the impacts associated with the, so the W3 is not required anymore. There are 3 new waiver requirements that they're asking for, and because of the systems have to be fairly large, the infiltration systems, they are asking for a waiver to allow them to be located within 10 feet of the building slab and 10 feet of the property line, where 25 is required. They're also asking for a waiver that for white paint as opposed to reflectorized paint for parking spaces. And then they're asking for a waiver for the face of a wall to be greater than 4 feet. So we are waiting for an updated landscape plan, so you'll note in our report that there's a few locations where the review can't be completed because we didn't receive that. Most notably Z1, Z8, SP1, SP7, SP, and we also didn't receive the photometric plan, SP9.
In this case, if unless anybody objects, I was thinking of having the landscape plan go directly to our design review committee. Let them review the landscape plan, because we've already been through some of the detailed past meetings, and let them report to us, give us a report on what their thoughts are. I know that we had looked at what their thoughts were a few meetings ago. We had some changes to what they were asking for, but why don't we just send this plan directly to design review and let them come up with something for us to review, okay? If that's all acceptable, everybody?
I agree.
Yeah, will that plan be adjusted again by the discovery that the adjacent property is commercially zoned? No.
No, it wouldn't. We still would keep that same buffer as we proposed. We wouldn't reduce that at all, even though that it's commercially zoned.
Okay.
The wall's not moving.
No.
No, and the terracing and whatnot,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, the way that we have it set up and was presented at the last meeting is the way we'd keep it, and with the fencing and everything
Okay.
else.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we're keeping we're proposing to keep the fence that was there, which you can see here being proposed, and
Yep.
Jason can go over the landscaping,
Yep.
but no landscaping changes have
Rick,
been made.
what is the separation on those underground infiltration units?
Can you change to the next plan, Betsy?
I know we've allowed them on private property to be closer to the lot line on a number of occasions. Just want to see what the,
This sheet on the other set, please. 8 sheet set from the first. There it is. Nope, that's not it. I'm sorry. So as Betsy's pulling it up, I can certainly show you where they are, but the structures are located below the elevation of the slab, the first floor, so they're underground below that.
and what's the separation from the high water mark on those units?
More than 4 feet.
It's more than 4 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, you don't have to bother.
Okay.
We had a couple of ones, like over at Boyd's Crossing, they required some additional testing, because in these infiltration units, if there's a 2-foot separation or less, then they don't work. So as long as they've got that minimum separation, then keep it on his own property, not 20 feet inland. I don't think is a big concern, because they're gonna function properly. And they're gonna have their own responsibility to clean these things out, too.
Yeah, one of the other waivers we requested was for some hydrodynamic separators that are proposed, and a comment was made by Bader with respect to who would be responsible for that. Obviously, the
You would be.
property owner would be
Right.
responsible, not the town.
I saw that, thanks. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, Phil, back to you.
So, yes, and then SP 19, we would expect a wall designed a final wall design. That can be included as a condition, probably.
Do you have a
The-
wall design, you guys, already?
Some of the design review board comments was that we use like a ready rock that looks like it's a larger block, but looks like natural stone when it's constructed with everything. We do have that. It is, I think, what the consultant's talking about is a structural engineering design. And what happens with that is that when it's approved and we know we're all set with the walls, we would send that out to bid to a couple of different.
Well, that's part of your building permit application anyway, to make sure those are structural, so. okay,
Correct.
If we focus on that or not.
Yep, and we would supply the.
So design
board.
review has looked at these ready rock walls,
The design review board was the ones who actually requested
them?
it, recommended them.
okay, thank you.
So, the applicant has provided a earth materials removal, moving permit, and indicate that there's 5,200 cubic yards of earth materials to be removed. The G1 on page 6, I think there's a confusion about the line of the sidewalk. The existing plans show a brick walkway crossing the town hall parking drive, and it looks like the walkway goes behind it, so.
If I may, Betsy, could you change that over? So the issue with that is there's a transformer located here and a handhole located here that's elevated. So we're trying to...
The handhold is flush.
The handhole is flush, yeah.
Yep.
But we don't want to put the sidewalk through the handhole or around the handhole. So that's why we were proposing to relocate it to the back side of the handhole. It's very difficult to try and get a handhole relocated.
So what is this, a brick walk that's
No, there's a brick crosswalk here
existing?
existing at the town hall property. Then there's two catch basins here. So what we're proposing is to relocate the crosswalk due to this electrical infrastructure that exists here, the transformer and the handhole.
So would you move the brick?
I'm sorry?
Would you move the brick to the new crosswalk location?
We would relocate the brick. I mean, we would, if the handhole's flush and the utility company would allow us to put a flush sidewalk up against it, then we could go over it. But if not, then we would relocate the brick and remove what's there and then relocate it back a little bit.
I mean, it's a good comment from Bader. I really think it's going to be a field issue when we get
Right.
an approval and get with the electric company, and then we could certainly, update the board.
You're probably not gonna be allowed to go over it, so you probably have to relocate that walk.
Yeah, I think what's confusing about the plan is even if it's a field condition, it should be noted that the brick should go wherever the sidewalk is, right? Because they're
That's
showing
fine.
it's kind of like two separate entities
Yeah.
right now. Yeah.
Do you have a note of that on your plan, Rick?
Sure.
Okay. What's that, Phil?
So, G3, obviously a lot of work has gone into the plan set, as if this particular entrance design is chosen. If we're combining it with the town hall, then I think there's gonna be iteration of some changes that, some engineering that has to be developed there. And then number 5, it didn't hit me the first time I reviewed this, but there's some retaining walls being proposed in the right-of-way. And I think that's gotta be vetted in terms of who's maintaining that and who owns that and
Whereabouts the
how
retaining walls in the right of way?
DPW.
That would be this area here where we have the decorative retaining wall, which we were mimicking the tramp house across the street. Jason can talk a little bit about that and go over the design concept of that area. So Betsy, if you could pull up.
Rick, can you just point to where the right-of-way line would be on the drawing?
Sure, this line here represents the right-of-way.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
This is the sidewalk that's being proposed, this is the sidewalk that exists currently. So we're picking up at this point, running the sidewalk down, and then this is the decorative wall here. And then there's a seating area built in behind it, which you'll see on the landscape plan that Jason can show you.
So when we were looking at this area, we saw this as the bookend for the streetscape that comes down Liberty Lane. And it also helps connect across the street to the common area. And so the materials of the walls and of the paving themselves mimic what was happening across the street. So it ties the whole streetscape together. So you create this nice urban design feature for pedestrian circulation as you move through here. And then this is where you can see, so this is where the right-of-way line is here, so you can see that this is where the paved area is with the walls. By situating it this way, you have a nice landscape transition from the back of these walls up to the proposed building.
Where's this actual sidewalk going to be?
So this sidewalk's going to be right here. So
It's
this
gonna,
is,
it's going to continue on?
yeah, continue that way.
So it goes through the seating area, John.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
asking.
yeah.
Very similar to what it does existing across. This plaza is a little bit bigger than this one is here, but I think that one has the more importance from the town perspective.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah?
I think it's gonna be, part of it's gonna be within the town right away. So I
Right.
think the ownership and maintenance of it is gonna be maybe as a condition or something.
Okay. Okay. Did you get that, Gino?
Yes. Then there are probably some housekeeping things related to stormwater management that are not too big. We would, however, call your attention to SW1H. The infiltration rate used in the model is reflective of a high A soil. The NRCS soils map indicate that the soils are, I think, a Canton loamy sand or fine loamy sand, I forget exactly, which are rated as a B. So we would request that the applicant provide some infiltration tests to confirm that they're using a higher rate for this area. I don't discount that they're likely to get that, but I think it's a policy that we should.
Have you done any testing out in that area?
We've done soil testing for the septic system. There was soil testing results that were done by Kohler and Colantonio for other reasons on the site. Under a previous application, we reviewed those. Soils were very highly permeable when we conducted the perk tests. I believe we had 24 gallons of water poured, and the hole was not able to sustain the water.
So the soil tests done by the town are in the public records,
The soil test results were part of the drainage report.
and that's in the public records?
Yes.
Okay. Did you include that with your filing?
They were included in the drainage report, the soil tests.
Okay.
We have the logs, but we don't have any infiltration tests, I don't
We
believe.
did not do any infiltration tests. We did testing, we did perk tests for the septic system. We did not do, a falling head permeability test.
Okay.
But, the soils were classified as a medium sand primarily. And
For the septic?
Well, but for the classification and utilization of the Rawls permeability rate, which was what was used for the design, based on the soil evaluation that we had done on the site. I mean, that was the basis for what we did. We classified it as a medium sand, as you can see in the soil logs.
Yeah.
And a medium sand.
They're mapped as a B.
But the
So-
field testing confirmed that they were a medium sand.
We don't have a gradation or infiltration test, so.
But you have the classification, which was provided in the soil logs. That's what
So,
was based on.
yeah, but if you look at number of different soils, we'll say loamy sand, sandy loam, and be rated as A, B, C, or D. So, it's just a practice that if you're gonna use something different than the record information, that you have to provide the infiltration tests.
And the field tests that were done, which is also suggested in the regulations, were including that it was in fact a medium sand. That's my point. If you want us to do permeability tests, we can certainly do that.
Your entire drainage system relies on infiltration, so we recommend that you do that.
Comments?
None.
Up or down? Test or not test? Test.
Yes, yeah. No big deal.
So you'll be doing a test by that infiltration area?
Is there a
We'd have to
difference
do
of
two
opinion on
tests in each area.
I'm sorry?
Is there a difference of opinion here on what grade the sand
Well,
is?
the logs show a certain type of soil, and Rick is going from tests on record for a septic system from the town years ago that show that the soils are different, which is what he used to conduct his drainage report
Well, the soil testing was done by our firm last spring.
last spring.
And that soil testing was done for the purposes of the septic system. And the soil testing indicated that the soils that existed on site were a medium sand. And the Rawls table and the stormwater regulations for sands gives you a specific rate. That's what was utilized as the basis of the design. Now, the NRCS mapping is classifying this as a Canton soil, which is a hydrologic soil group B, which would not give you a medium sand, typically. But the field conditions, the test pits that were excavated, the 4 test pits that we excavated indicated medium sands.
Where were your test pits?
There's a test pit here, 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 and I believe over here, right here. I believe those are the 4 that we dug. And then we also looked at, it's got to be half a dozen test pits that were done by Kohler and Colantonio, and those soil logs were also provided.
So your data is differing than the, what was it, geological data? I don't know where that other source
Soil
was.
Conservation Survey by Norfolk County.
Do they differ? Yours is more favorable.
Well, they don't, the county just maps them based on geology. He's saying
They
that,
actually tested it.
he's saying he actually tested. Now, when you tested all around the site,
Mm-hmm.
did all of the soils come out the same?
Yes.
So the whole site, no matter whether you're the back or the front, all of them come out the same?
They were all sands. I believe they were fine sands to medium sands, but they were all sands.
Rick, where are the infiltration points relative to the places you tested?
There's actually one located over here and one located over here.
So, okay, so they're a few feet away from where you tested.
But there are soil logs that we had from the other firm that were in those areas.
That indicated that it was the same type of soil that you were seeing when you dug your pits, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. And actually, when this went through permitting previously, they utilized, Kohler and Colantonio did the engineering design at that time, and their drainage design was based on the same Rawls rate that we use, 8.27 inches per hour for that design.
So do you feel that the number and location of testing sites satisfies best engineering practices from what you're advising?
So I think it's DEP's policy to require that you use the Rawls rates for the NRC soils, unless, if you want to use something different, you provide on-site testing.
So I guess the
That
question is,
requires-
But didn't he do that? Didn't he provide on-site
that was my
testing?
question.
He did perk tests, which are not,
He did
which
perk
are-
test for the septic, but not,
But with the question in hand is the type of soil, correct?
I don't disagree that he's gonna get a high infiltration rate. I think it should be a practice that whenever it deviates, that you provide those tests, you know. I think he may actually get a higher rate than the 8.27, and he may actually make,
I agree. I mean, based on what we've seen, I'd expect these soils to be in the
so he may
40
be
or
able to.
50 inch hour range as opposed to the 8.27 we're using. You don't know till you test it.
What's the downside of testing? Just more cost, obviously. Otherwise,
Yeah. I mean, we'd have to go out and test,
Or time?
time and cost.
How much time and how much money?
Well, you'd be out there for a day with a machine to do the testing.
Well, to me, it's not the money issue. The money issue is it really required to hold things up? And looking at a map that maps this from wherever is one thing, and actually having test holes in there I mean, if it's sand, it's going to infiltrate as we suspect, correct? If that's the texture of the soil.
Right, if there's
Or
not,
better than what he's using.
right, if there's not a lot of silt, then he should have, fairly good infiltration rate.
Okay. That being said, I don't know if there's a need to go back and do more testing and infiltration, but,
I can live with that.
Yeah, I can live with that.
all right, I think that we're gonna live with that and make sure all those soil docs are part of your package to us, okay? So we have a record of that?
Yes.
Okay. What else you gonna fill?
I mean, there's probably some minor technical things that we can work out. The long-term operation and maintenance plan needs to be updated.
Okay. So basically, we have do a lighting plan. Do you have any idea where the overheads are going on this? Do
Yes, we do.
you have a lighting plan already? Just haven't submitted it.
It was submitted before, but it might have been slightly updated based on what we changed.
Did design review see the initial one?
Yes. If you go to the next sheet,
Design review saw your initial plan with your initial landscape package? Okay. So you've just made some modifications to that,
the one right below that.
based on their comments?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, I think the lighting plan also,
Yep.
if it's been changed, should go back to design review to follow through on their initial comments.
Right. So this shows you the locations of the overhead lights that you would have in the parking lot itself. And then in the front has the uplights that would be either in the trees themselves or be cast up on the building themselves. This is the light pole that we'd be using in the parking lot, which is the same light fixture that you see along the street. So it ties in the lighting elements from Liberty Lane into the site itself.
So what were the modifications design review had you adjust?
Some of it was locations of light poles, where to try to get more light in this area, because originally we had this light pole a little bit closer to the wall itself, and then we moved it closer to here to add more light to the parking.
Betsy, do you have a copy of the design review's report to us on the lighting and the landscaping, their initial plan?
Sure.
All right, so as long as we have that for the file, we have a record of that. If nobody has objections, we could have this plan and the landscape plan sent over to design review to follow up on their initial comments,
Yep,
to make sure
okay,
they followed through as they were supposed to.
sure.
Were lighting changes just made for this pedestrian walkway and everything over here? Were any changes made to the lighting to accommodate for this pedestrian walkway change that you guys put in?
There was no lighting for this right here. Is this what
Yeah,
you're?
is there any additional lighting that
There
was?
was no additional lighting made for that.
We could leave it up to the design review board to make their assessments and then
Well,
re-review.
well, especially where they've done the first report. Now they're getting their second report back with their comments. I think it would be out of place to look at ourselves first, so they should give us a report back and make sure it conforms. We also made changes to the design review's landscape plan. Do you remember that? Did we make some changes to their comments also?
There was an island or something
Yeah,
that was
planted pot or
planted in the
something.
middle, and
Okay,
I think we pulled it up to the edge or
Exactly.
something like that.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, I think it might be worthwhile if Jason from Bola just actually highlights some of the revisions based from comments on from this board and design review board. Actually, because we're pretty excited about this new landscape plan. We reduced the height
Sure, go ahead.
of walls, and
Absolutely.
I think just the whole pedestrian pathway is very friendly.
One or two, Jason?
One. Yeah, it's perfect.
Before we go here, I'm so sorry. Where are we at with this alternate entrance location? I'm sorry if I missed that last time. What's the status of
I
whether
bel-
we're going one way or the other?
Isn't that on the warrant for the fall town meeting?
Yes, it is.
Potentially.
Why is it a warrant issue? Why is it not coming up here for us to recommend what we?
Well, if they use the alternative entrance, it has to be approved by town meeting. What I had talked about That's the law. What I had talked about is, when we close this out, I would like to vote on approving both entrances, if that's the case, and give a recommendation on which one we'd prefer. So if they get it voted at town meeting and we prefer the combo entrance, then that's the one they should be required to use. If they don't get town meeting approval, then in the meantime, we could approve the other one. But that structural work won't be done at town meetings.
And it is on the warrant.
So the reason I
And it's
ask is
on the
because it
warrant.
greatly influences your landscape plan, right? How you treat that corner and treat the entrance largely is driven by where the entrance is. So that's sort of why I interrupted.
I think probably if we approve this plan and recommend the alternative entrance, I think we should probably have a stipulation that they come back with an adjusted landscape plan.
So we can actually go over that tonight, if you'd like to see. We have landscape, an updated landscape plan for both. for
Okay,
this
because I was
option.
almost wondering,
Perfect.
shouldn't we
And for
develop
the
the one that you
alternate layout.
recommend, right? And
Yeah.
kind of emphasize that, and then have this as a backup
Perfect,
if
we
it
got
doesn't
both. Let's see
pass.
the other
Well,
one.
yeah, we'll need both because the town meeting could reject the proposal.
I know.
You know, so.
Isn't that kind of backwards, though? I mean, what if this board decides that we don't like the alternative plan?
Then we can take it off the warrant. I think the consensus when we saw the first thing, that everybody was pretty much in
Yeah.
agreement, made sense. And I know the public safety liked the idea of one driveway that's lined up directly across from the library driveway, so everything is confined right there. So I think way back when, although it was 3 months ago, I think that we thought that alternate plan probably was gonna look the best. Along with that, they've added since then that connection, the walkway that's gonna connect Town Hall to this particular project here, so.
It's just as we've gone through this whole thing, we've just been talking about this one outlook, so we haven't had a chance to really vet through how this impacts the other alternative route.
Right.
Personally, I don't really feel I'm leaning that way right now as we talked about this version, but I'm sure that's a conversation for a later meeting then.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Conversation. So why don't we start here, and then I'll run through a couple of landscape changes that have changed. I'll kind of summarize also from the DRB and where we are now, especially mainly in the rear. And then why don't we talk about the alternate layout after that?
Great.
So let's start in the rear. So originally with our wall design, when we went to DRB, they made the comment about how do we soften up the wall from the view from Liberty Lane. So we went back and looked at the wall design and how we could break them up and then add this evergreen planting screen that's along this bottom level. So when you're looking down Liberty Lane, you'll actually see these evergreens themselves that help soften this wall along on both of the retaining walls here. And then on the retaining wall that's on the lower property line here, we actually planted evergreens behind that with the same concept for the other retaining walls, doing the same thing along this edge, which would just be junipers. It's a low maintenance plant and it will help soften up the walls in that area. Excuse me. So those were the rear changes for the landscape, which really helped soften the wall
Is it
Area.
two-tiered retaining wall?
in this area.
Yeah.
Here. This is where you have the one wall here, then you actually have the fence along here. Originally it was a two-tiered wall, but it's no longer a two-tiered. Just to clarify, it's just one wall with the fence, and then this is where we're able to do some evergreen planting, junipers and
If it's gone back to a one-wall design, how high is the wall? It's in this plan that he handed us, I don't know.
Betsy, can you go to sheet 4 of the site plan?
If the original site plan, right?
What we've done in front of the wall, from the parking lot leading up to the wall, is we've done some grading to soften the height of that wall at a 1-to-1 site grading, fairly steep. And we provided a planting area in front of that, as Jason had mentioned. So you're gonna see the evergreen shrubs. So right in here, what we've done is from behind the, thank you, behind the dumpster pad location, we were able to do some grading in front of the wall and soften that to about 8 or 10 feet. So now you're gonna have the evergreen planting that Jason showing up here, that's gonna be blocking a portion of the wall. And then this smaller evergreen planting up top that kind of blocks the fence that's on top of the wall for safety reasons.
And the wall itself is how high? 8 or 10 feet?
8 to 10 feet
8
in
to
that
10
area. It might actually get up to 12 in a couple areas. I mean, it varies, but it's,
Okay.
8 to 10 above, so you're a sloped
we're sloping up.
sloped planting area, and you're 8 to 10 feet above the top of that slope or above the parking lot?
The wall, the sloping's probably 6 feet from the back of the dumpster pad location to the bottom of the wall, and then it's 8 feet from that point.
Okay.
So 14 feet
Yeah.
above,
And that slope on the planted area, what is the grade?
1 to 1 is what we were looking at. in order-
And this is the wall that's faced with the stone that Tom was talking about?
Just to minimize the wall.
Before, I think it was
Makes sense.
1 to 1, okay.
Yeah, in combination,
Rather
right,
than
yeah.
flat.
Yeah. Now, how about down the remaining wall out to the Union Street?
This wall here,
Yeah,
yeah, that's much lower. That's much lower. You're gonna ask me, now I gotta read it, because I can't read it on there.
Yeah, I was wondering, so that's the highest part of the wall is around that corner?
Yeah, we did a lot of grading revisions and softened it all with landscaping as we went through it. So that wall, I mean, it varies. You've got some steep grading in this area here tying in, but that's like 6 to 7 feet or so in height in this area here where it's at its highest. You know, the grade's dropping off, the wall's following it, and our grade's coming down along with it.
is the parking lot itself sloped up towards the wall?
No, this parking lot's relatively
Relatively
flat with some undulations to direct the stormwater flows.
So those evergreens also follow along that sloped,
Yeah, Jason,
planted area?
we wanted to screen the walls, is really what the intent was.
So this is where that area we were just talking about. So I think it's, if you can envision it, right, with, if this wall is 8 feet tall, these evergreens are 6 to 8 feet tall. So it's really just seeing the tops of that. But it's also, what helps visually too, is that you have evergreens on the top of that wall too. So you're gonna have the evergreens, you'll see the top of them. You'll see a little bit of the wall, and then you'll see evergreens above that as well. Then the fence behind it.
So, and then the plan indicates that you're gonna have stone slope behind that.
Right. So that, and that's what these evergreens help screen, is that stone riprap slope that goes up. So this is where the grades are, where we're able to plant is where the grades are a little bit further apart. They're not at the one-to-one slope.
What's behind your evergreen? Is it a deciduous? Where you have the sort of the larger diameter?
These ones?
Yeah?
These are the bigger evergreens, so they're like spruce trees.
Oh, so they're also
Right. So
evergreens.
and what the nice thing about the spruce trees, instead of just going straight up, they'll get wider too and really fill that end to screen.
What variety is the smaller evergreen that you have along the line?
These ones are cedars.
No, they're like the entire line.
This one here?
Yeah,
Nope.
and that marches all along the parking lot? Is that, no, the one yeah, what's that?
These ones, those are grasses. They're going to be out in
Oh,
front.
okay, those are low.
Yep.
And the wall that's right up against the property line is that really the fence, or is that the wall too?
So this is the fence line here, right up
Yep.
against the property line. Then you have a row of juniper trees.
Mm-hmm.
And then in front of that is where you have the retaining wall. So there's a separation from the property line and.
Fair enough. Okay, so if you're in the parking lot, you're looking at 2 walls in that section, is that correct?
Here, you're looking at one wall. Because the wall is here.
I'm missing it. That long row with grasses, is that what you said?
So out in
That's
front
not a wall at all, huh?
Nope, those are
You're at-
plantings.
You're at parking lot grade there.
All right, I understand. Thank you.
So when you look directly up that driveway,
Mhm.
you're gonna see the top of the slope, the top of the stone slope is at 239. The parking lot grade is at 210, so you got like 29 feet. And you're gonna break up with the evergreens, is that it?
Right.
Two levels?
So you have the big evergreens that are here, then you're gonna have the wall, the height, then you're gonna have evergreens there behind the wall, and then behind that evergreen is the fence,
How high is the fence?
6 feet.
So I like it all except that in the forefront, is a dumpster. That kind of bothers me, and a dumpster. And I'd really love to see if there's an opportunity to have, I mean, that corner's sort of becoming a focal point in a nice way, you know, a soft way. But I almost wonder if you could put it on the opposite side. You know, you'd have to relook at parking and all that other stuff, but.
The dumpster would be fenced, correct?
Yeah, but I'm thinking of sight lines, and I'm thinking of this thing, you know, your eyes carrying up to it and being brought up by a dumpster enclosure. It's just not doing it for me.
I think they got it there because it's the deepest part of the lot.
Yeah, I didn't know if you could get it on the opposite, exactly opposite symmetrical corner. You see what I'm saying?
What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Worth exploring.
Yeah.
Because then that's a really, you know, you're coming in off the street. It is this sort of anchor in the background. You're really doing all this nice stuff to soften it, and it just feels like a lost opportunity.
Yeah, I understand you. I think one of the tough things is getting the access
Yeah, yeah.
to there, and
Yeah.
it's the parking.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible or not. It may be worth just exploring to see if it's possible. May not be.
Could you take a look at the alternative plan now?
Yes, can we touch on this? This is the other area I kind of wanted to talk about with the
Before
landscape
we do
too.
that,
Oh, you mean
Right, so we have that nice new walkway with the stair connection, which the materials of the stairs also talk to the materials we're using here, but also the materials that are at the plaza as well, with the stone walls and then the nice staircase going up. And then in this area, we're planting around the stairs with juniper, and then we're also adding daylilies along the edge of the wall, so we have some nice color, seasonal color as people move. And what is really nice about this too is it really connects the pedestrians from Town Hall really to the site and into the center.
Similar materials, you say, to what's used, is that granite or is it?
Yep, granite.
Yeah, okay.
Granite and then stone walls.
Yep.
We can go to the alternate plan, please. Should be, let me send it to you, concept two. Perfect. Okay, so with the landscape, you know, everything kind of stays the same around the site. The only place it really changes is here, where the entrance would change. In this area, this is where you would have the directory sign that's here that would have the landscape. So, you know, visually you would see it, some nice landscape here, but also down the roadway. You would also see a landscape at the sign with some pocket plantings as well. And then you would have two more shade trees in here. And you were able to add another tree along the streetscape here than what we were able to have on the previous version.
To the point of the dumpster, is it still there in the corner?
It would still be in that corner, yes.
Doesn't look like it, but.
Yeah, so you wouldn't see that landscape there. It'd be just like the one before.
Any questions, anybody else?
And that additional shade tree you got on the corner is okay for, because that's the exit for people coming out of Town Hall, right? From a visual.
Right, it might have to slide back a
Yeah.
little bit, depending on where the walkway settles too.
Speaking of walkways, presumably the entrance has a sidewalk from the town hall down into the property?
Here.
No, you see where the sign that you pointed to was? Somewhere along there, is there a walkway to get
Or
down
a
into the?
sidewalk?
Sidewalk?
It wasn't proposed on this one.
Have you looked?
So where the previous one, this is where that walk.
Yes, I understand, but now that we're proposing on this one, a joint entrance from Liberty Lane, there's no footpath from the town hall
Right,
into
like
this
let's
property.
say you
Is
finished
that
your
what you're
business
saying?
at Town Hall and you kind of walk along the sidewalk and are coming down to this, it would be nice to have that walk continue it.
You'd actually continue out into the street.
If we did do that, we'd have to remove quite a bit of the landscaping.
Yeah.
We'd have to remove quite a bit of the landscaping in that area where the business directory sign. We'd actually have the sidewalk come through here and down to that area. And actually, where that landscaping is in that island, we'd have to try to make something happen in there with it as well.
Well, I just think that, you know, if someone does come out of either building and head to the other building, Town Hall to here or the other way around, they're not gonna go all the way down to the street and walk around, they're gonna walk right down the road.
Right. Especially with that
it's
nice
human
cut
nature.
through that you did through the building to encourage that kind of circulation.
We sort of lose that space a little bit with the two lane.
Can you put some stepping stones in there or something?
Yeah, what about that stairway that you had from the other design? Could that still be put in there?
Don't need it.
Gets a bit more steep the more we come this way.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, we just run out of room. I mean, we can look at it and see what we can do, but
I think if they put the sidewalk
it
in, it
does
has to
get
be.
tighter.
had to
Yeah.
The
be
more you
flat.
come to the back, the more steep the property
Yeah,
is.
yeah, sure. Well, as evidenced by the discussion we had about in the corner there.
Has the grading been worked out for that? Making that connection? That looks very challenging in terms of grading.
Yes. Yeah, that's included in the plan set, the last two sheets.
All right, I want to start. Any other questions, Walter?
No.
Okay. So right now we have the lighting change review for design review, and we have the landscape review for design review. Folks feel we could close this meeting contingent on getting those approved by the design review committee.
Can we close it contingent on also making suggestions for feedback they have? I mean, it's one thing for us to receive, it's another thing for us to get them to incorporate it.
I think we just, as long as we list what feedback we're looking for, we can incorporate anything into the plan as far as, what else are we looking for aside from
Page, Betsy.
if the alternative exit is used, we want to revisit the engineering, the grading and everything, the landscape plan they've already done. I don't think that'll affect, if you guys use the alternative entrance, will that affect the lighting plan?
I think, yes, it will. The only place that will affect is here. Because right now, the light fixture that we have is right around this location. So it's a matter of moving the light.
So I think
Or adding another one.
I think we'd
Or
like,
add another one.
I think we'd like the contingency along with getting the design review to look at the updated changes that if town meeting decides to allow the alternative entrance, that we get an updated plan with the landscaping and any changes made by using that area. So because like I said, when you get out to the site, you may find things are different.
Yeah, is there anything else left on the punch list that we ought to include as sort of
Anything else, Phil, that,
No, I think this, obviously, you have to update the stormwater for that as well, too, but, no, I don't have anything other than. I mean, I don't know if there's a discussion for traffic items.
I think we finished the traffic.
Okay.
excellent?
Is anybody in the audience here for 18 Union Street? Has a question? All right, seeing none. You guys want to close the meeting? I'll take a motion, and you can list the contingencies with that.
Okay. I'm going to move to close the public hearing for 18 Union Street. Do I have to make each one separate? Site plan, earth removal, and special permit?
I would say yes.
Okay, start with the site plan. Contingent upon design review board of lighting and landscape plans. Also contingent upon the outcome of town meeting with the potential to possibly review additional engineering and landscape items based on the final entrance.
For a second.
Second, but I do have a comment before we. I would appreciate it, difficult as it may be, I would appreciate if someone would take another crack at if we do go with the alternative entrance, to take a look at how we might put a walkway there, sidewalk, something, just to ease that issue, because people are going to walk down there, I know they are.
We can look at that.
Great.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you want to close up the special permits, Michelle?
Yeah. Can I do those together, or those have to be separate?
I would do them separate, just.
We move to close
They're
a public hearing for 18 Union Street for earth removal permit. And do we have to have the same contingencies, or
No.
the earth removal?
No.
Just so that's it.
Second. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And lastly, move to close the public hearing for the special permit for 18 Union Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so you folks can get that information right over to design review. We'll let them know it's coming, and they can give us a report back, and we'll let you know if we have any other additional changes, okay?
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Just one question, was it? Design review board asked us to look at a darker color for the building. I did bring a sample.
I think our board is gonna be picking out the color, Tom, so if you want, do you wanna, why don't you leave that here for the, in the town hall office, and
Sure, I will. I'll bring over the.
I'll let the members decide what.
Betsy has enough stuff.
Yeah. We have an architect on board, maybe she might have one of the better suggestions. That'd be great.
Yeah, I know.
Like blends in with the war match.
Thank you.
And then I can, if it's not a good color, we can look at you and say, she picked it. Remember her when she's on the board? She picked it out.
Okay, here
All
we
right,
go.
yeah, that's for me.
Haven't had dinner yet.
All right, next we have Cranberry Heights, continued open space special permit.
This is Pandora's box, so we open that.
How's it going?
You guys got any paper plans? Betsy, you have any paper plans?
Yep. You're blocking me. I don't know who the hell I am.
Steve, that was the last revision, right?
Yep.
Okay, Steve, you're on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. On behalf of Bella Rosa Stables, my name is Steve O'Connell from Andrews Survey and Engineering. Continued public hearing for a special permit for an open space preservation development for a residential subdivision that will connect Eagle Drive to Cranberry Meadow Road, both of which are off Lawrence Street. We are in receipt of a review letter from Beta Group Consulting. We didn't prepare any responses to this letter, didn't feel though any were necessary. But I think it would be best, Mr. Chairman, would be perhaps to go through some of these comments, see if the board feels as though anything specifically needs to be addressed, or if any questions need to be answered. And then following that, I'd like to perhaps hear some additional comments from the board and see, really where we'd like to go from here.
Before we go over with the peer review consultant, Gino, one of the comments from planner, can you call up the yield plan? So the yield plan, for folks that don't know, is a plan that shows what they could build by right. And once that plan is accepted, then they're allowed to do an open space plan and change frontages and setbacks and add 10% more lots to their plan. Now, the dead-end cul-de-sac there with 2 lots with no turnaround,
Upper left.
That's supposed to have a turnaround to be built by right, not a dead end.
It could be extended to that abutting property, but, which is held in common ownership with the current landowner of this property.
Well, that's really what you got to show. It says on the deeds, it says Town of Rentham. Is that old?
Is it old?
I mean, is the notations on the assessor's map old, because that says Town of Rentham for ownership?
It is, it's in the town of Rentham. It's Eagle Brook Estates, Eagle Brook Realty Trust, Estates Realty Trust, but it's in the town of Rentham.
Well, that's an issue because the zoning bylaw says that the dimensional requirements have to be met inside the town of Norfolk. So you couldn't extend into the town of Rentham to meet the, you would have to show that cul-de-sac within the town of Norfolk boundaries. Or at least you would have to show the complying with the frontage and area within the town of Norfolk.
I didn't want to get it to this point, but I was just looking back at PGC's questions, and they were all answered, I believe, but this one here. And unfortunately with that, if you have a turnaround there, a radius required by our regulations, then 2 of those lots would be out,
Potentially,
potentially, which means the yield plan would change.
potentially, right. So,
Is there an intent on the part of the developer to continue the development in the next town, hence the,
there's no intent, because the open space plan shows all of this area, really to the south, all being part of the open space.
Gino says that's Rentham, and that can't be included in this plan.
I understand, I just trying to figure out if this is only half of what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a similar set of drawings for, in the town of Rentham that shows the marrying of the two. I don't know whether there is or not. And he says no.
Right.
So see the circle on the end here is the space that a turnaround, meeting
Yeah,
your
but-
turnaround
Yeah,
requirements.
but you know that that's not relevant, because you kind of have a temporary acceptance of a temporary turnaround on a town right away. So basically, unless there's an answer, you're gonna have to adjust your yield plan and adjust the open space plan accordingly.
If it results in the need for that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you could reconfigure things so you have that turnaround and
Yep.
still get the same yield.
Sure.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the, you're all set with as far as your questions then, right, Gino?
Well,
Anything else that's not answered before we go on to Ada?
the other comment I had was on the cut and the 100,000 cubic yards being removed on the open space plan. The criterion for an open space concept plan says one of the goals is to reduce cuts and fills.
I know.
So I didn't see a calculation for the conventional plan, if that was more or less cut and fill would be required compared to the open space plan.
Well, you're correct. We did not provide that calculation because I think it speaks for itself. And if you'd like to see it, we can do that. And what I'll also say in response is that since our last meeting and since we submitted these plans, we've been continuing to work on some design components, specifically some grading of some of the lots, especially along this southeastern edge where there'll be a lot of fill. And we've got the net cut less than 50,000.
Oh, big change.
So we've made some, adjustments, as we're working our way towards a definitive submission, hopefully. At the client's request, we've started to look at those things. The length of this road alone, which ties into the same 2 locations plus the added length, would certainly yield more than 50,000.
Understand that, as you know, and I think in the beta report, we have some calculations on the cuts required for some of the lots, which isn't part of this cut and fill. Your cut and fill is the roadways. The cut and fills on a number of those lots going down are gonna be 30-foot cliffs off the back. And what the planning board is gonna have to decide on their own with my one vote, is the theory of an open space is to minimize the change in the topography and keep things as natural as possible so that we're benefiting from the natural contours of the land. And starting off, which is why I asked for the cuts and fill analysis and try to have you at the last meeting to try to go back and cut that back. And I understand this is a very difficult site to work with. And we stand with these cuts, and we had mentioned that the 100,000 cubic yards is in the range of, to use the terms from another project, 4,000 tractor-trailer loads or 80,000 truck trips. If I got that right, Mr. Judici. So anyways, you know, unfortunately, we have to consider when we grant or not grant the open space part of this, you know, the activity going on across the street. So in theory, if this is going to be a small resemblance of what it is right now, then the board has to decide whether the open space plan is the best way to move forward.
Well, I don't disagree that it's the board's responsibility and obligation to look at all those aspects. But unfortunately, we're not dealing with natural topography. There's a large earth removal that took place in a good section of this property that we're now left with. And we're working with that to the best we can. I think there's no doubt in my mind that the open space plan, which utilizes all of that previously disturbed area and minimizes disturbance in currently undisturbed areas, is the way to go.
Let's go on to, all right, I think that's.
Right, and one more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I do understand that the cuts and fills from the road are something that is a direct result of the subdivision of land, but when it comes to talking about truck trips for imports and exports of soil, if we can demonstrate by plan preparation that lot development is going to reduce the amount of export from the property, I think that's valuable information for this board to make a decision.
Well,
We
you
can
know-
cut the truck trips in half or less.
Maybe Gino's comment then of maybe providing the truckloads coming out of this subdivision with the yield plan as compared to the open space plan. Why don't we use that as the first barometer to measure this, to see if it's helpful?
Sure.
And then I think when we go to our engineer, we're going to talk about the lot configurations and the slopes that are going to be kind of steep there. We can go into that, exporting of material as like a second phase, okay?
Sure. Yep.
Phil, with that, could you go over each of your items? And after Phil gives us each comment, I'm going to see if there's any questions before we work on to the next one, so they remain fresh, okay?
So, relative to the yield plan, we noticed that a significant portion of the property is within Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Act mapped area, and I didn't know if there's been any discussion with them in terms of whether this would constitute a take, either the yield plan or the open space plan.
We have met with them. They have informed us that this would not be determined to take if we could provide them with 50% of the acreage as open space. And
Provide them or the town?
well,
Either
provide-
raw?
Either, yeah.
Okay.
If we could preserve.
Okay, okay.
Was
Does
that
it matter
five-
where that 50% is?
It just needs to be contiguous. And obviously, they would prefer that it be in their, as much as in their mapped area as possible.
Yeah.
So on this plan, you can see this dashed line that runs, it actually kind of gets buried by the property line, but it kind of runs along the property line.
Mhm.
So everything in this area is mapped endangered species. It's a salamander, and instinctively you would think it would maybe come from the wetland resource series down here. It actually doesn't. It actually comes from 2 vernal pools within the existing neighborhood.
Okay.
So that's why the mapped area is more on this side, westerly side of the property, because the source of the salamander, as I said, is off here to the west within the neighborhood. They did not map those existing properties because they're already developed. So that's why in our open space design, we preserved most of that area.
Okay.
Did you say 1.5 or 5.0?
5-0.
5.0.
50%.
Yeah, 50.
If it's 15,
Would that,
sure.
would that impact, obviously, the layout of the yield plan?
Correct. That's one of the reasons why I feel like the open space plan is a better plan.
No, but what he's saying is, again, do you need a modification of your yield plan based on that criteria?
No, because if they deemed it a take, there are other mitigation methods with natural heritage. They couldn't stop the project.
Okay.
There could be fiscal impacts that would, have to be as a form of mitigation.
I thought you said they only deemed it not a take if you preserved the 50%.
Right, but they could deem it a take,
And then,
and they couldn't stop the project, but there would be mitigation procedures that would have to be followed.
and you feel that all those mitigations would not result in any loss of lots? You think it could all be accomplished with this yield plan?
I do.
Is still the question.
I do. We met with them, showing this plan and the open space plan.
Well, yeah, of course they're gonna like the open space plan. The question still goes back to the yield plan.
Right, but I'm saying they said they would deem it not a take if we could provide 50% of the land as undisturbed, contiguous habitat.
Understood, but we're still trying to work off pretend you don't have an open
No,
space
I understand, I'm
plan.
getting to that.
Still work on the base.
So-
Does your yield plan,
If we submitted this to the board without a special permit for an open space plan, and then we would have to go to Natural Heritage for a MISA permit, they would consider this a take, but that doesn't stop the project.
Right, but how does it impact the plan?
It wouldn't impact the plan, only this board would impact this plan.
this yield plan here, is 50% of the remaining land open space as it stands with this yield plan?
No, the open space plan is.
So this one does not, what percentage of land is left on the yield plan here?
0.
So you've used up everything.
So it would be a take.
Right.
Which-
And when they determine there to be a take, there are different steps that have to be followed.
Right.
We would either there'd be forms of mitigation. We could do a land
Well,
bank.
it's not like, when you're in priority habitat, it's not like you have the option to pay or put aside land. They have the option to really take the land if they think it's valuable.
Not anymore.
I
It
don't-
changed under the Romney administration. It's a significantly different program now than it was.
All right, maybe we could
6+
follow
years
up
ago.
on that and see. I think Michelle's point is just, the yield plan is what you can do by right, and if by right you couldn't do this because of natural heritage, then that, I think, was the question.
Yep,
But-
I get it. I totally get it. And
All right.
my response is that, yes, it would be a take.
Okay.
And
I got your
the,
response.
when you can't provide bank land, when you can't provide comparable land in similar mapped habitat, then an alternative would be a financial contribution, which
So you can always take the habitat as long as you pay.
the negotiation starts about $10,000 an acre, and that goes towards, that goes to towards their program, towards
All right.
the purchase of land that the state uses to preserve.
Okay, let's
habitat.
move on. We got a long night here, and we're behind schedule
All right, so I guess
terribly.
that will also answer number 2. So, number 3 is just a recommendation that, I know you've shown that the rock wall on the concept plan to be installed outside was it the 50-foot or the 100-foot?
200-foot outer riparian.
Yeah, so my recommendation is to really protect that area behind it, is to make that the property line as well. So, in consideration. If relative to the other comments, maybe some realigning of some roads would reduce cuts and fills, and, if there was an opportunity to make that a property line, then
Okay.
we recommend doing that. Number 4 is relative to the discussion already about the cuts and fills, the idea of minimizing and creating a natural topography or utilizing the natural topography, and understanding obviously that this is a fairly topographic challenge site. I mean, my comment was basically the upper cul-de-sac area is fairly significant in terms of earthwork.
Where are lots 3 to 8? Where are lots 3 to 8 with this
They're up
30-foot excavations?
right around the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, they're all up here, because this is really the high, pretty much the high point of the property. And if I could comment on that, I think it would be a good time. So we've recently had an experience in another community where, despite what their subdivision regulations allowed for a centerline grade, their review consultant told us that if they exceed 5%, we would be in non-compliance with Massachusetts Architectural Access Board and ADA regulations. And I, adamantly disagreed. However, to resolve the dispute, we went to the Mass Architectural Access Board, and they supported the review consultant. And their recent interpretation of walkways along subdivision roads is that they cannot exceed 5%, or they become ramps, and they can't exceed 8.33.
It just seems like, is your open space plan utilizing those lots 3 to 8? Or is that
No.
some of the land left natural?
Those are lands on the lots, so we tried to limit the grading, onto the lots as much as we could. So there's a little bit off the lot here in this configuration. But so I guess the point I'm getting at is we didn't exceed 5% slopes here, even though your subdivision regulations allow. We can drastically reduce cuts.
Well, you could if you make it a ramp.
Yeah, but have you seen the requirements for a ramp?
Yes, I have, sir.
I mean, it's not practical to have a ramp in a subdivision along, for sidewalk purposes. And I saw you shaking your head like I couldn't believe it either. I couldn't believe that was a determination of the Mass Access Board. It's got widespread impacts, if you ask me, on all these communities that have subdivision regulations that allow 7, 8, 9, 10, 12% centerline grades.
All right, let's move on and try to get through the rest of this.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, if we were to increase our centerline road grades to your max allowable, we're talking about significant changes.
We haven't got there yet.
We're here now? What do you mean?
We haven't got there. We're trying to get through the comments right now. When we talk about minimizing the cuts, like I mentioned to do last month, perhaps you could come up with a plan that shows a different centerline roadway and show the difference in the cuts and the fills.
I know, but I want to get the feel from this board about this issue with handicapped accessibility. If you've had an experience in another community or...
No, we haven't.
I know you haven't because you're in Norfolk, but has Phil or has Gino?
Before we get into that, we've got some more basic stuff to do. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, so the final comment is, the regulations require that the open space plan be completed by a landscape architect, and we didn't see a stamp or signature on that.
Right, this was one of Gino's earlier comments. If the board feels as though the plan needs the stamp of a landscape architect, we can make that happen, but it'll be the same plan you see today.
We still need it to regulation, so I mean, if anything, that's kind of a bold statement up front. I think someone that's trained to do this may try to work with this topography and come up with something that works better for us.
Yep, we've consulted with the landscape architect.
All right,
We'll
well-
just make sure that they get their stamp on it.
All right, fine. If this is going to be sort of your final plan, then fine, that'll be good. But what I would like to do is I would like to get the cuts and fills on, I'd like the yield plan adjusted so it conforms to the regulations, number one. I'd like to get the cuts and fills on the yield plan so that we have that to measure with. Get the cuts and fills on the open space plan. And why don't you throw in something with a change in the road elevation and give us the number of what the cuts and fills will be with that change? Just so we can start to have things to compare with, so we have some choices to go by. And I think another thing at this particular stage, if you folks are really interested in the open space permit, is get us some type of calculations on the earthwork needed on the lots.
Yep, that's what.
Because that may be as much or more than the road. So now the 100,000 could be $250,000. So I think all of those numbers, I think if you've got those in front of us, Steve, like I said, along with changing the grade of the road, so we have some things to measure by, and then the board can decide which way they'd like to go. Please give us all the tools for next time, and we can make decisions from that. If
But
that's
how can we
okay.
ask him to give us an analysis that the state's gonna reject unless you're expecting him to go for a variance?
Are you talking about,
I'm talking about MAB. I mean, if he changes his center line and it puts him out of compliance with their recent ruling, what's the good of him even bringing that to us if it's gonna get rejected?
which ruling, Michelle?
The
So-
MAB, the.
Massachusetts Architectural Access Board.
So my understanding is if you're following the grade of the road, then the ramp can be whatever the grade of the road is. The challenge comes when you become to intersections, and you have to have 5% or less across the intersection.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not the case.
That's what he said
I
in the
was
ruling.
floored by the ruling. It was just a couple months ago.
So you think that
And
won't
I have
work
it
either
in, I think we
way?
have it in writing.
Okay, so we'll save from doing those
Another
numbers then.
project.
Okay.
It was flabbergasted.
I mean, unless you
Flies in the
expect him
face
to
of-
go and try for a variance, that would just be his only option, and there's no guarantee that they're gonna pass that, and it's a lengthy process, and
All right, so why don't we forget about putting together those numbers then, since it's not feasible? We'll just go with the initial cuts and fill numbers that we need and go from there. And like I said, you could reconfigure that so it conforms, and hopefully we can make some steps forward next meeting. Okay? I know some folks are here for this filing. Anybody have any questions on what we've been talking about? Or- Right now, we're just in the open space stage, so I did receive the letters from the abutters, so, and I think everybody has read them. But if you have any questions concerning just what we've been talking about? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Margaret Cahaley, Cranberry Meadow Road. I just concerned with the cuts and fills and all the neighbors being surrounded on Eagle Drive and Cranberry Meadow all have well water, and what this, with the water table and all of the cuts they're talking, as far as I know, the water, my well water is tapped into water that comes from the direction of the site, and just some major concern there with that they're gonna be cutting down below the level of the water table, and that's all. Thank you.
Do you guys anticipate blasting on this site?
Well, we don't, we hope not to. If there's any area that may have to happen, it would be up at this intersection with the extent of the cuts that we're showing, but we'd like to minimize those. This is not an earth removal exercise for my client.
I understand. I understand.
And that's why I brought up the access board issue.
Okay.
Something we may have to talk to offline about with Phil. Share my recent experience and some of the I believe we have something in writing from them. It's a big development.
Someone else? Yes, ma'am. Just give us the name and take a microphone.
Oh, hi, Carrie Gillis, 7 Eagle Drive. I'm actually the house right next to the odd-shaped lot that just doesn't fit in with the rest of the, kind of at the end of the cul-de-sac on Eagle Drive.
Yes.
Like
Which
the
one
pizza
are you-
pie wedge. I'm 7 Eagle, I'm right at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, all right.
Right next to the pizza slice there. I have a lot of questions. I think it's probably a little too early in the process to ask some of them, but I did want to mention, and I mentioned to the people that were doing the survey, that my well, if you're looking at the front of my house, is right on the right-hand side to the right of my driveway, pretty close to the property line. And I noticed that the septic is going to be at the front of the house that's going to be my new neighbor. So I know there's minimum distances, but I just wanted to make sure as we go through this process, if that house is built, that that septic is very far away from my well water.
I think that's all in the Board of Health regulations on
Okay.
how close they can make it. I think, is that the lot that you had the issue with, Michelle?
Oh, yeah,
This one.
yep. Yeah, I wasn't sure what she was referring to.
Yes, she's right
If
about
the
that.
septic was in the back of the house, I probably wouldn't care as much, but where it's in the front, it just looks awfully close.
We lost it.
It's just a preliminary septic. That's not the result of a design. It was just showing what a 4-bedroom septic system,
The size would be?
size-wise scale,
Okay.
the scale of everything else.
Okay.
And just a general question, do we know who's actually would ultimately build these homes? Because okay. So the applicant isn't actually
They can offer that information, but we wouldn't know.
it's too early. Okay,
It's too early for us to.
all right.
Okay.
I'll save my other questions for another time.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Mike Judici, Eagle Drive. You had mentioned the letter from the abutters earlier. Is this an appropriate time to discuss that, or would that be later on?
No.
Okay.
We're trying to get through the
That's
open
fine.
space part
Thank you.
first, but we don't all get that mic and read it, so.
Thank you.
okay. Any other questions for you guys?
No,
That's it?
no, John.
All right, so
We've covered the issue.
I think by the next meeting, so you folks know, we can get these final numbers, and I will present it to the board to make some determinations on which way they'd like to go, but I think those cuts and fills would be a big help in letting us make that decision. So what do we have, yes, Phil?
Can I just ask that,
Sure.
I've worked with Andrews in terms of determining whether that's a valid issue with the access board?
I would say that would be fine if you could do that. If you could come to some consensus that that would work, and that would save that much of the cuts and fills, that I would say definitely.
Okay.
You could
Everybody agree?
even make a call to them. You don't have to reference the specifics of this project. You could lay out a more generic scenario and kind of get some feedback from them as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, I've got some
Right.
recent correspondence from another project.
You think they would be that much, the change in cuts and fills?
Yeah, I mean, you go from 5 to 8% over the length of road. Yeah, you could pick up 10, 12 feet vertically.
Okay, certainly worth pursuing, just to
We
see.
agree. That's,
Okay.
and we're probably a little bit early for this. An alternative to address this, depending on what the board felt would be more valuable from a project basis, would be, it's a little bit radical, but no sidewalks. Maybe slightly wider pavement, since most people seem to walk and ride in the street anyway. Maybe slightly wider pavement. If you're going to have a 4 to 5 foot sidewalk and you have a 28-foot travel lane.
Well, it might be interesting to potentially stop the sidewalk at the intersection and not carry it up to the cul-de-sac. That's where you have your biggest grades, isn't it?
Well, we'll have to see where we would start the 8%.
Yeah.
But that was one alternative on another project, was we stop the sidewalk and just have a return out into the street where the slope exceeds 5%.
I'd hate to lose it altogether, but if there's a strategic spot that we could potentially stop it, that makes sense from a safety and circulation and grading, maybe it's a nice negotiation between all those things, yeah.
Agreed.
All right, a motion to continue this public hearing until when, Betsy?
November 29th at 7:30.
I move that motion.
I move to continue the public hearing for Cranberry Heights Open Space Preservation Special Permit to November 29th at 7:30.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, guys, thank you. We'll see you next time with the
Thank you.
information. We have a request for continuance for 6 Sherwood Drive, so
I move to continue the review of the 6 Sherwood Drive site plan to November 29th. Is that one at 7? Is that the one we already have at 7?
We've got Sherwood Drive at 7. I scheduled a public hearing for 194 Main Street at 7:15, and then this one's at 7:30.
So I'm moving to continue 6 Sherwood to the November 29th at 7.
We had already done that.
Oh, you moved already?
No, I think you guys, oh, I'm sorry.
We're voting on the
Oh,
continuance.
sorry. I thought we had already
they
done
must have had
that.
a senior
I'm gonna try it
moment
again.
for that.
Third time's a charm.
Missed that.
Ready?
Yeah.
Go.
Done.
7 o'clock.
We missed the discussion.
Yeah, third time's the charm, go ahead.
Move to continue 6 Sherwood Drive site plan to November 29th at 7 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye, yep.
Fox Run folks here? Gary, how are you? Did you get a copy of the latest comparative report?
I did not review anything.
Or Betsy, could you make sure that Mr.
Here,
Sears
yes,
gets a copy? Is that an extra?
There's a few copies.
Here,
That is
That one's
indexed
in
just
color.
like an engineer would
Oh, that
prefer.
one's in color.
That one's in
Take
color, you
this.
take that one.
Color one.
Better.
These are all the same?
Yeah.
One in color.
Want a color one, Bill?
We're not special.
But the email one was in color.
John, thank you for coming. I am gonna have Phil, good report, easy to read, long. If you could give us just a general overview of the change in the structures from taping we had a year and a half ago until recently. There has been deterioration in a lot of them. The deterioration, Beta is broken down into major deterioration. He's got a section for new deterioration that wasn't seen a year ago, and he's got some that from a year ago have also progressed. And you should have a copy of
There's a
this-
copy here.
this-
You got one?
You got one? Very good.
Oh, you need a microphone, sorry, but.
Well, he's not gonna talk yet.
Oops.
Let Phil do it. All right, hold tight with that, John. Phil, why don't you just give us a general review of what you found out?
Okay,
Right?
so I had my colleague review, the same colleague who did the, I guess, the 2017 videos first, and then he went back and just checked off which issues were also in the 2016 version, and if you have the color, I don't know if they come out very well in the
pretty
black
well.
and white, but in
Yeah,
the
they
color
do.
version, there's a pink, or it looks like probably would be gray and black and white. Well, the pink means that it was on the 2017 videos, but not on the 2016 videos.
So new in the last year.
So new. And then there's also a yellow color, which probably didn't come out on the, let's see, let me see if I can find it.
I think there's only one or two, as I
Yeah,
remember.
it's only, probably it's near the back.
We're on page 9.
Of the
Page
7 years, I
9.
can do all that.
So page 9, numbers 26. So there were a few times where we noticed that it showed up on both videos, but the 2017 was worse. So that means the issue was getting worse. And then I just started going through, I spent a little bit of time going through the 2017 relative to my discussion up front, which is kind of a description on how concrete and steel work together. When steel is compressed, it is very strong. When it is in tension, it breaks easily. So that's why it's reinforced, so the steel would actually keep the concrete together. So some cracking is natural when it's in tension. It's when you get the bigger cracks that it becomes more of an issue, especially if you have either acidic soils or the cracks big enough to allow migration of soils into the pipe, which will eventually, over time, that continues. A lot of these pipes are under roadways. It would weaken the base of the roadway and cause sinkholes or just warp pavements or and such. So I started going through and I made in red bold areas that would definitely need to be looked at again. The problem with the video is if you've watched the video, you'll see a crack as the camera gets close, and then it'll stop at and then refocus right over the crack, and you can see it in some of these pictures where some of the magnification may make a little crack seem huge. So, so
So
we
you've
just
got to
gotta be
look at,
careful.
you've got to look at those red bolded items to make sure that it really is a worthwhile crack.
Right, right.
Your breakdown was excellent, and it sounds like, I guess there's different types of cracks, and where they are and how they run is based on what the problem may be. And from what Phil has read, and he's gonna correct me if I'm wrong, but the cracks we're concerned about are the ones that are caused, and you feel it's from the bedding underneath the pipe?
Yeah, it's either the bedding or there's unsuitable materials that are causing, weaknesses in the middle of the pipes.
On top?
Well, the load comes on top. It's especially when and most of the cracks are wide on the bottom and either non-existent or very narrow at the top,
Which
meaning
would-
the pipe has gone this way.
Yeah, as you described here, it's a broken belly. too.
Right, broken belly.
So that would mean the bottom of the pipe was not secured properly, so the pressure made it break at the bottom.
Right.
Is that the majority of the issues that you see?
Yes, there's also one, if you look at that picture on page 2, you'll see where the bell is. There's also a number of cases where this pipe that slips into the bell is dropped. And there's a lot of breaking there. So even right at the bell, if the pressure is significant enough, it'll crack it and push the
Is
pipe
it
down.
dropped so it's not in line?
Right.
Well, how do you put just thinking forward, how do you put an insert pipe in if the pipe's not lined up?
It's more difficult, right? So some of those maybe you have to replace prior to sleeving or whatever. I think there are some options that, unfortunately, the engineer, the project engineer is out of town this week. So when we came here,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I had a chance to speak with. I'm not sure how to turn it on.
Just a green light, turn it on until the green light comes on, that's all. It's not for us, it's for the people at home.
It's on now.
Okay.
I did have a chance to speak with Bill briefly this evening, and also our engineer. They're emailing back and forth this evening, trying to set up a meeting for the first part of next week to discuss the report and potential fixes for the different areas. Bill had mentioned, again, we just got this, so I did not have a chance to read it prior to the meeting. He mentioned that there were some areas that were probably going to be remove and replace, and some areas that there may be an alternative repair. So I think those are the things we have to sit down and discuss to satisfy the engineering side of it, and then present those to the board for their
Bill, what
approval.
percentage of the damage in 2016 got worse? I know it's hard to quantify, but
I want to say, I don't know, it looks about 30%.
a third of it got worse.
Yeah.
And how much new cracking did you discover on the current tapes? I didn't see a lot. Is that true? I forget how you color-coded that. Nothing
Oh,
seen
no,
in
no,
216,
no,
but
there was only a few cracks, issues.
That are
maybe
brand new.
3 or 4 that were
brand new.
worsened. So, yeah, all the pink is brand new. All the pink colors.
All right, so
So
there's
I want to
a
say,
lot
no,
more than a few.
There's a lot that's brand new.
All right.
you know, either it wasn't picked up or it's I didn't do a it looks
I understand.
25 to 30% more.
So it sounds like correcting this is gonna be like a 2 or 3 pronged process where some of them have to be replaced, some may be available for inserts.
Yeah, I think we'd have to figure out on a more of a specific type, one, it may not be wise to replace a 200-foot section of pipe there's only one crack in it, or two locations, you know, maybe it's a spot fix
All right.
as opposed to. So although some pipes, there were a few cracks in it, and then now there's, you know, a half dozen to a dozen. So that run you may want to just go and replace that whole run, you know.
So this is gonna be broken down section by section.
Yeah, yeah.
Foot by foot, pipe by pipe.
Not to get off on finances, Betsy, but who is paying for these reports on the drainage? Pulte will be. Oh, that's nice of you. Thank you. All right, I just wanted to clear that up. Do you folks have any questions? I know this came very late, and so basically it's showing everything that's been cracking is, a lot of it is cracking more and more. And it looks like some of it is gonna have to actually be dug up in the road and replaced.
Well, it forms the basis of a good analysis of the whole system, so that you can
does.
go through
This is an
and
excellent
figure it
report.
out exactly that.
I didn't have a chance to read it because it came late, but it really in detail explains the cracking and what they can determine from it, which I didn't know before.
But there's no immediate impact danger or anything like that from the way that it's progressing, right? No. Okay.
The worst case is, you know, you end up with sinkholes if the brakes were too bad and the water running through, but they're afraid some of the soil could be getting in, but if soil is getting into the pipes, then a sleeve going in there would correct that, right?
Yep.
And sleeves going in there are structural by nature?
There's different kinds.
Are there structural ones though? Because that's what I know we insist on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a real threat of a structural failure of the pipe. Like, it's not like a corrugated metal pipe that's, you know, been in the ground for 50 years and there's rusted, you know.
Right, we're just assuming these are gonna continue to deteriorate.
Yeah, I mean, these will be in the ground for another 100 years, and
We just have to make sure the replacement pipes are gonna not be damaged.
The issue, though, of on your page 2, where you talk about broken bellies, it says there's no fill under that pipe, right? And it sags. When it gets pressure on top, it sags and cracks, right?
right.
And then there's others where you've got the broken back issue, where there's something underneath you, and there was concern that some of it was large chunks of rock that were put back in there instead of sand or gravel.
So there was
So
a few
there's-
occasions where a rock was actually penetrated
Yeah.
through.
Mhm.
So there may be sections where the whole fill underneath the pipe needs to be redone. But this is the basis of determining what you need to do section by
Does your
section.
company, John, know what's going on? Your bosses at Pulte know what's going on?
With the drainage issue,
They do. Are you in litigation with anybody that installed this stuff? You mentioned.
no.
You're not. Are you trying to work out anything with the parties involved, or no?
We are, right now, kind of hovering, to be honest with you, until we were able to evaluate the situation, find out what the repair method would be, and we would take our next steps from there.
I think maybe, and everybody can jump in, because this is new to me. I think maybe the next best thing might be for Phil from Beta to work with the DPW and one of your structural people to try to come up with a plan that takes the breakage or the deterioration of each section of the piping and have a solution for that. For example, as you said, the ones that have lengthy, big cracks probably serve a purpose just to take all of those out and replace them. The ones that are salvageable with an insert can be salvageable with an insert. The ones that have bell problems have to be taken out and the whole pipe replaced with a new bell, obviously. So I think it's gonna be a station by station thing to try to get this thing fixed so that the town's happy with it and the planning board would be happy with it. And I guess the neighbors also, even though they have the brunt of it, but don't have the least say. But that being said, I talked with the water department because, as I mentioned last time to Mr. Cook, I'm sorry he's not here tonight, but we are going to be testing the water soon. So we're gonna be going station to station, the town water department is gonna be doing pressure tests coordinated with the neighborhood to make sure all those water pipes are all in line. After that, the pipes that the town doesn't own but would be stuck with are the sewer pipes. My next question to our engineers are gonna be, is there a mechanism to check the plastic sewer pipes to ensure that they have no problems? Now, I've been told that the plastic is a lot more durable, less susceptible to bad fill, et cetera, but I think that the neighbors where it's, have they taken over the infrastructure yet, the association?
Yes, the homeowners run the homeowners association.
So in theory, you're responsible right now for all the sewer pipes?
Yep.
So we want to see if we do know of anything offhand that can be done to,
So
I know with all the connections and everything, it's going to be,
Yeah. So typically, there's pressure testing, but more in line with probably what this shows is what's called Mandrel testing. You put a round device just slightly less than the interior width, and you pull it through to see if it goes through, and you'll find where it's deflected and/or any kind of out of alignment issues. So
all it wouldn't tell is minor cracks then, right?
it would show out of alignment and whether the pipe was deformed. It wouldn't necessarily show. The pressure testing would show whether there's
Cracks.
cracks.
So with a combination of that, we should be able to get some determination on the sewer lines?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want.
It is. Is everybody in agreement? We want to check all the sewer lines for the folks? I mean, but we're going to be digging up this roadway. It seems like the time to check everything out before we dig it up and find something's wrong. And obviously, we want to get this done sooner than later. So I know the water testing is going to be done in the next week or two. If you can start the ball rolling, Phil, give us a proposal for this, and we'll pass it on to Beta. You can tell your folks, and we can have you guys start. I think I'll have our engineers take the lead in trying to come up with a station-by-station solution for this.
Okay.
And as you're doing this, run that by the DPW and the folks from Pulte. So as you're going through it, just come up with a consensus that the town is going to be happy with this and Pulte understands what's going on, and we can try to get this thing done as quickly as possible. Hopefully the water lines are fine and the sewer line is fine. Then it's a matter of just going section by section down the roadway. So if you could come up with some proposal for that. And
Okay, so there's going to be two separate things. One is the drainage and then the sewer?
yes, we want the sewer tested concurrently when we're starting on the drainage and coming up with a solution that would work for the drainage.
Okay.
And the water will be done by the town on a third. So we can finally come up with all the pipes in the ground and really how much work has to be done to fix them.
Okay.
Have you guys tied around the raised manholes yet?
No.
They're all raised. You probably want to do that before the plowing. Are you guys plowing your own roads or the town?
We're responsible for the roads.
All right, so you probably want to get those.
We'd be happy to have you plow them.
Yeah, well, you'd pay, and I'd be happy to do it, but you might want to, just for the convenience of the neighborhood, get those things all graded around so they're not dealing with the bumps. Gary, any questions?
Yeah, I have just a couple questions, mostly for Phil. You commented on the going station by station. It just seems like it's a very subjective process to me. Is there a standard that exists that says under these conditions, the pipe gets torn up, under these conditions, a sleeve will survive? How do you know whether a sleeve is going to work or whether it needs to be torn up?
Well, I think what we will do is we will probably develop a typical kind of scenario, and for what, you know, there seem to be quite a few duplicates of issues in these situations. So I think what the idea was, you know, some pipes only have one break in the pipe, you know. Some pipes have multiple breaks, so I think it would depend, and also the ease at which getting to the pipe, you know, there may be an issue with utilities in that area, or you know, there are many different ways to look at to take care of the issues. So.
Yeah, but my comment was more that if you see damage in a video, how is that going to tell you that a sleeve will survive in this damage? Is there a standard that already exists for this type of replacement? Or are you going to use your knowledge of doing this in the past, or someone else's knowledge to say, I've seen this exact condition, I know a sleeve would work here. Nope, this situation over here needs to be dug up. That's what my question is.
So generally, the issue with these pipes are not going to be structurally, like, we're not going to expect a structural failure. A pipe isn't going to collapse all of a sudden. No.
Pipe won't collapse.
No. The majority of the cracks are what's called transverse or circumferential, which would be which is similar to a joint in the pipe. So the idea is that the pipe is reinforced both longitudinal and circumferential, and the pipe is designed to take a load directly on it. What has caused the cracks is that the load is not used to take, you know, is not is taking a load not even on it. So the idea of sleeving it would be to prevent the migration of soils into the pipe, because then the water will carry it away, and you'll eventually lose your whatever's above it and or below it, and make it worse. If we just seal it so that can't happen, then you've addressed 90% of the problem.
Okay, so sleeving always works under every condition, because the pipe can't collapse, and there's never a need to dig up the road. That's what I just heard you say.
Well, not all the cases. If they're out of alignment, it's difficult to sleeve it. Like if the pipe has dropped.
So that's where the mandrel comes in? So the mandrel's not a sphere, it's a rod that has a diameter just a little bit smaller than the idea of the pipe, and you're gonna try and pull this mandrel through, and if you can't pull it through, you dig up the road?
So a mandrel is more specific for a sewer pipe, which is smaller.
Okay.
A mandrel that size, I don't know if I've ever seen them. So, I mean, you typically use it for a 6, 8, or 10-foot sewer pipe. These are 12, 18, and 24-inch pipes. Again, there are also systems where they do pipe lining by injection of concrete. You know, so that may be an alternative.
I think, Gary, when we talked about the misalignment, I think anything misaligned has to be taken out and redone.
Yeah.
And when you set your parameters for doing and deciding what type of repair, if there's any question, we're gonna take the more conservative way and take the next step and repair it in that fashion.
Right.
We don't wanna leave the town with any liability on this, you know, because we're gonna hold you guys accountable too if something happens down the road. So,
And then in all of this, there's assumptions that you made, right? You said, well, this should work. I'm going to do this part over here, and I'm going to dig this one up, and I'm going to put a sleeve in here. So there's assumptions. And does that mean that at a later date, a year, 2 years, 5 years, someone's going to scope the pipes one more time and say, you know, 5 years went by and there's no damage. We did a good job with our assumptions. Or do we just wait and see? Because in my mind, the problem I have is that you got a big diameter pipe, it's stronger. Now you're saying, I can just sleeve that and I can walk away from it. But that pipe cracked, it's sagged. The smaller pipe, in my mind, is weaker And sooner or later, if that big pipe sags a little bit more, it's gonna contact the small pipe, and that's gonna crack as well. So I don't know, and
Well, this is
I
why
was
we-
just hearing a subjective process.
Well, this
And
is why we talked about the type of insert. As Phil said, there are structural inserts and there are non-structural. And again, we get into something like that, unless there's full assurance that the non-structural is adequate, we probably want to go with the next level up.
Right.
And yeah, in this whole process, my guess is the planning board will require new videoing periodically just to make sure everything is working. And also, like we've talked about before, when this is all being installed, there's going to be a representative of the town that's there inspecting all the work as it goes along to keep proper notes, because in the records of this project, we have a number of reports talking about trenches being filled with shale and stone and required to take it out and bring gravel on, and this happened at one time 6 or 7 consecutive times. So once the DPW left, they went back to the same old habits. That being said, this project, the whole thing is going to be under supervision. So we're going to make sure that every pipe that gets inserted is inserted properly. And the board hasn't talked about it, but you guys have a bond with us of a substantial amount. That's probably going to end up staying in place until we're sure that everything works, I would guess. So, you all set with your questions, Gary?
Thanks.
So if that's all said, you can start on the proposal on what to do and develop a game plan to start to go section by section, whatever the section lane should be based on the damage. Go through that with the DPW, go through that with Pulte's folks along the way, so they're informed as we go along and come up with a process to rectify all this thing. I'm hoping we can get this thing done and start as soon as the weather breaks and just knock it out.
In the spring.
That's what I'm hoping. That's why I'd like to get started right away on that. And your folks are all aware of what's going on, right, John? Okay, great. All right, that's great. You guys have any other questions on this? The report, you should take time and read it. It's very decent.
There's another color copy here if you want it, by the way.
Oh, I can get it.
He's got
Anybody,
it electronically.
is anybody else here for this filing? Anything? It's not a filing, it's actually just a discussion. Okay, then, Phil, you can get back to us when you've got some parameters of proposal and a plan of attack.
Excellent.
We'll go from there, okay?
All right.
All right, thanks for your help.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Oak Knoll Old Cart Path, signed lenders agreement, release lots 1, 2, 3. Who's here from Old Cart Path? Do we have any neighbors here from Old Cart Path? Hello, are you the folks that submitted the letter? Is one of you folks the folks that live on the lot where the ledge cropping is as you pull in on the right? That's you.
I am, John.
Your name?
Ashley, 22
Bob, how are you?
Road.
Because I did a site visit today, and Mr. Roween, first name?
Todd.
Todd, how are you? I went out there and I looked at that site, and the fence, thank you for putting that up, although unfortunately it really isn't that effective as far as somebody getting hurt. And I guess on the old subdivision plans, you're required to hammer that ledge cropping down. Hammer it down and step it down, so if anybody falls off something, it's gonna be no more than 4 feet or so onto a ledge. So the neighbors had brought that, I wasn't on the board, I don't think anybody here was, but I think part of the job is to get that thing hammered right away. And the other, did you folks read the letter from the abutter that's on the corner there? A couple of the other things that he mentioned, I think are kind of reasonable. The pile of stone and debris that's been there for a while along the roadside, can you get that removed?
Yeah, as last meeting we discussed, when we get the lots released, the lots need filled. And our intention is to use. Is it on?
It's on. There you go.
is to use all the excess rock on the lots.
All right, then why don't you do this? Why don't you take it and bring it back in the site so the folks aren't looking at it all the time? Just bring it down one of your driveways.
There's no room left there. We have, that's what we want to clear the trees in the lots, develop the lots immediately, and use the
Is there
material.
driveways in yet?
There's access areas there
So
to get,
is there any way that this can be brought so it's not in the view of the neighbors? These piles?
it would be a lot quicker if we stock the lots and put it right where it needs to go.
I understand that, but basically, how long has that stuff been there for? A year? 2, 3 years, they're saying. Okay, so basically, that being said, you really should get it out of there soon.
Right.
And the other thing is the soft shoulder, that really should be stabilized. I mean, just by the DEP rules, all of that should be all stabilized. So you've got, right now, you've got one of the folks buying a lot is at the Conservation Commission looking for a building permit, and they've got water there with catch basins. They're going down to Army Corps of Engineer land. So really, that should be hydroseeded right away. So all of the shoulder of that tile should be seeded.
Yeah, the people building are the owners of the lot.
I understand.
Yep.
But if you're in the subdivision, you really have to stabilize all the shoulders on that roadway so there's no runoff. So what I was gonna suggest to the board, so that we wanna get your lots released and sign the bonds, you can get going. But we do want those 3 things done. And I think when you were here, 3 months ago, we talked about that ledge cropping there. And I know you're in the business, and I know you have access to a hammer, so I think that we'd like to make this bond release contingent on those 3 tasks being done. And the 3 tasks are to hammer down the ledge cropping in the front so it's safe, to stabilize the roadway, hydroseed everything so it has time to catch and stabilize, and get the rocks out of sight. And I'll leave it up to where you put it as long as they can't see it.
There's not going to be enough room to put all the rock. That was the idea, leaving it where it's at.
Well, in that case, take them off site.
Well, that doesn't make sense either, taking it off and then
It
putting
doesn't
it
make
back.
sense to have them there for 3 years.
We discussed this
I
particular item
understand,
last
we
time.
did understand,
And-
but
and
now some
we
new
were under
information
agreement.
came, and I didn't know the piles have been there for that many years.
So all the rock has to be taken off the site before the lot's released? Is that
How many-
what we're saying?
How many piles of rock do you have there? 2?
There's 2 outcroppings and there's
I want the
Five-
outcrop, the
500 or
outcrop,
600 yards of
I'll
rock
open
there.
to the board, but to me, the outcropping should be taken care of right away. It's a safety hazard.
It's yet, once we hammer them, we have to move the rock to a
I
spot.
understand,
That's what
I
we're-
understand all that, but this has been going on for 3 or 4 years right now. And part of your submission approval was to get that so it's a safe, and it's still there. Everything's still there. So, comments from anybody else, so I don't take up all the time? That is the situation down there. I'm gonna let, Sir Bob, I'll let you, just give us your comments. As a matter of fact, why don't you tell us, what your letter was involved with right now?
Check.
You're all set?
Betsy, Bob Paschke, 22 Stop River Road, you got that? My objection back when this originally came up was the rock outcropping. The concession was that a fence would be put up there when it was finished.
You live at 22?
I live at 22.
Well, at the last meeting, just not to interrupt you, at the last meeting, when I asked about the fence, the quote given to me that the neighbors in 22 thought it was safe and didn't need anything. And I insisted that,
There's no fence there.
I insisted they put up a fence as a minimum, but go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't at the meeting when that was discussed.
No, I was
Sorry.
running it, yeah.
There's no fence there now, but I know the plans call for that.
There's an orange fence there right now, a construction fence, but it really isn't
And that was
effective.
put in yesterday. It was up on the rocks this weekend,
Okay,
so.
all right.
I've worked with Mr. Irwin, so I have no objection to any of the rock piles because they're in the back, out of my site. They're more in the site for my neighbor on this side. I also have no objection to his plan he had experimented with this before, and that is you drill the rock, you put down some pneumatic, something down there, and it cracks the rock open instead of pounding it all day long for however many months he was out there. So if that gets done pretty, in the next few months, I find that acceptable. I have no objection to the rock piles as long as we can get them moved sometime, so the project started 3 years ago, but as long as they can be moved, and it sounds like if these lots are released, that they can build the homes, and the process of building them will move the rock piles out of the way. And the stumps that, again, I don't see the stumps, but
I didn't see the stumps when I visited there.
there's quite a few of them. It's quite a pile.
Right, so those have to be removed anyway, because they can't be buried.
Yeah. So, yeah, I am concerned about the rock pile. As I sent an email to Betsy, there were 2 kids on it this weekend, and all it'll take is one step. I measured it. It's 16 feet down, about 16 feet from, your feet, pretty much straight down. So when Todd gets it angled or sloped or whatever it is that has to be done, then I'm fine, just as long as it doesn't stay there for an indefinite period of time, which, it's been, trees were removed 3 years ago. That's it.
Comments, you guys?
Yeah,
Walter?
What I just heard was that the neighbor who initially was concerned about the rock piles is willing to let the rock piles stay there, which is.
That's one thing.
That's one thing,
Yep.
yeah, that's
Good.
different. Because as I thought I heard you say, they will be used in the construction of the homes, right? So, I'm okay with that.
Yes, ma'am, do you want to say something?
Hi, I'm Kathleen McKenna, 24 Stop River Road. So I had brought a picture down today. We just have, there's been this huge pile of stumps, right behind our property, abutting the land. It's been there 2.5 years since we've been there. And that was one thing. And my husband was really worried about the elevation drop that we have. It's more, and it being safe for kids out there. I don't know if you took a look at that. It's more, we were under the impression there was going to be some manicuring out there, that it wasn't going to look like it does right now.
Do you know what she's talking about, Tom?
Must be the slopes going down the pond.
The slope going to the pond.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Is that on the lot as you come in on the left?
Yes. Yes, it abuts the.
It's down in the back.
I don't think we have much say on that right now, but what we do have say on, as I said, is the stabilizing of the roadways. Jump in, guys. The movement of the stumps that cannot be buried by law.
Yeah.
And that ledge thing in the front has to be. Have you guys taken a ride down there at all?
No. Actually, you have a drawing of this thing you could.
Because I've had the
put up on
building
the board
commissioner
or,
talk to me about it 3 or 4 times in the past year, saying that he gets complaints. It's a big cropping. The ledge is probably, 3 feet off the pavement, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The site plan.
Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but once we release the lots, isn't that our last bit of leverage to ensure that these kind of things get done? Do we have anything else that we can hold at that point?
Well, what I was going to suggest that we release the lots contingent on these things being done, and then he actually gets his document.
So where are you at in your process of development? How much longer do you anticipate developing?
We only have a few months. Once the houses get started, we can remove all the excess rock, put them use as fill in the house areas
When is that? When will the houses get started?
immediately if we get the releases.
For those of us who didn't have the opportunity that John had to go down there and take a look, could you point out some of these features on this cul-de-sac here and show me what's going on?
We have the ledge on the both sides of the road here. This is a small piece. This is the large piece,
That's the one that they're worried about with the fence.
and that's going to have a steep slope per plan.
Okay, but now that's the one with the 16-foot drop?
Yes, straight down.
Gotcha.
That's the one that has to be adjusted.
Understood,
That's the
okay,
one
thank
that's-
you, yeah. And where are the rock piles that
They're on the side of the road right here.
Over there, yeah, okay. And the stumps?
They're right here.
Yeah, okay.
The idea was when they clear the trees, we were gonna have trailers come in and take all the stumps and everything out.
Yep.
It must be there, yeah. Where does that lady live, right here?
I believe right here.
Okay, any other gentlemen? There's a
On
glass
that
of
side
water.
there.
The slopes down here.
Yeah, down, it goes down to the, yeah, okay.
All right, so basically, to me, you gotta get that ledge hammered right away. It's gotta be safe.
Does that seem reasonable? Do you think?
Yeah,
we
I
can
just,
do that?
it's, as you hammer it, you need to, I mean, there's quite a bit there. The idea was we were gonna bring it right to the lots and put it there, hammer it.
Bring it to the pile. They're letting you keep the pile.
Assuming this is it.
Mm-hmm. And why couldn't you bring it right to the lots?
They have to be cleared and it's prepared for the fill, which is not gonna take very much time once they,
No, but
once
they're
they start.
large lots. You could still generally bring the rock in the area of
Right.
the lot.
Exactly.
You know, and still get all your clearing
Well,
done.
no, there's not enough room for the lots like that. It has to be cleared, stripped, and then filled.
Yeah, they're really odd-shaped lots out there, yeah.
So when you say contingent, do you mean he has to do that first
Yes.
before they get released? But he's saying he wants them released so then they can hammer it and bring it to them
Well,
simultaneously.
again, this has been in process for 3 years.
That's why we've been waiting for that, is the owners to get their lot releases to be able to finish that.
The thing is, you know what? I don't want to get a call that somebody fell off there, slipped off there and died. It's not dangerous. I guess the commission got a call because 2 young kids were up there a couple of weeks ago, and he's on me to get this thing done because it's part of the site approval. It's got to be done. It's got to be done, and as far as I'm concerned.
And there was going to be a fence at the top anyway after it's hammered, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I remember that.
Is that right?
I remember that.
So if you don't want to hammer it down, how about you put a fence, then hammer it?
You can't
take
put
the-
a fence up and make it safe.
You can't put
No,
a
you
fence up
cannot.
and make it
No, you
safe.
cannot. You have pure
Because I was going to
access
say,
from-
bear the cost of 2 fences if you don't want to hammer it down. You know, something to mitigate the safety
You
issue.
can't. You can't. It's right on the right of way on Stop Road. You could walk right up either street and climb right up the hill, which is what the kids are doing. So anyway, and
So
then-
are you in agreement with the conditions that the board
Yeah,
is?
if that's what we have to do, yes.
Okay.
Choice.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry. I don't know if this is the right forum, but so the elevation drop, the reinforcement of that elevation drop, that's not part of this, that's out of bounds right now?
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't think
It's
it's
a-
Is that stabilized?
That's, yes, that's
Is
what
it
my
grass
question
right
is.
now?
it's all rip-rap right now, stabilized.
Yeah.
All right, so as long as it's stabilized, then he's
It's according to plan and
according to the
design.
plan. We just don't want the water running down into the Army Corps land, that's all.
Will you be cleaning up the lot area as well? Like there's like right
stumps?
now, well, not just the stumps, but there's like this rotting metal barrel and there's some like
Yeah,
debris out there and stuff.
Can
I
you
assume they're
clean
gonna
up that
tidy
lot
that
for
up
it?
before the house goes in? Or sooner?
Yeah, I can clean all that stuff. There's very little, only a
Okay.
few things there.
So you'll
yeah.
take, I guess, Mr. Ruiz going to take out the stumps and clean up the debris from the lot, so you don't have to look at it. And stabilize the roadway and hammer down that ledge so it's safe, and then bring it out back for when you start to build.
Okay.
Yes, sir?
So I have a question is, and again, this may not be the right thing. John, when you were out there, you saw that rock, the big rock outcropping, there's one huge boulder, and then there's a lot of fractured rock that's next to it. Probably typical of when the icebergs dumped it off, big and small. So one of the things I was wondering is, how do you stabilize, I think it'd be easy to stabilize that huge boulder, because you're just going to chop that down and, slope it and do whatever's necessary for that. But I'm wondering on the other side there, where it's so steep, I guess it would be similar to what we've got next to the Cul-De-Sac. Would that be riprap or something like that?
It's just going to be rock face. It's noted on the plans. I think it's a 3-to-1 slope. Just
It's not,
rock
the whole,
face.
that whole outcropping though isn't all rock. Excuse me, it is not all a single rock that you could slice it down. Because right now, there are smaller boulders that are falling off the face as it erodes. And you think, okay, once they've once you finish this, what do we've got to hold back the portion
What he
that
has
is
to-
not?
What he has to do is make it safe. I mean, the bottom line is what I'm suggesting here with the alteration and stepping that is just to make it safe.
Yep.
So that thing is gonna be safe before we get, well, as long as the vote goes that way, we release the lots. I mean, I think he can do that pretty easily. I don't think it's a big task that I'm asking him to do. So,
So I think what he's saying is it'll be, if there are loose boulders or smaller boulders, they'd be left in a position where they're not precarious, but they're stable. I think that's what you're saying.
the side
Is
should
that
be, the
possible?
rock boulder when he's done should be safe to walk on, so you don't slip off and fall down too deep or, you know.
Right, safe from further fall
Right,
hazards.
exactly. That's all.
Thank you.
You guys, any comments? Does that sound reasonable?
Seems fair.
Yep.
So it
Is there a way
sounds
to?
like,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
nope, I'm done.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Is there a way to put a time commitment onto if we do release the lots, when those rock piles will be gone? Is there a way to identify or put a stamp on that?
There is a way. We could write it into the same agreement. I think it's gonna be in the applicant's best interest to use that, because that's good structural fill. So he's gonna wanna use that to fill in rather than paying to bring something else in. So I think just by the nature of what it is, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for him to move it not. And the only reason I bring it up is because I've got a neighbor complaining for so long, and, it starts to get old, that's all. And when they're gonna start, so. But we can release the actual document, we can sign it, vote to release it contingent on these things, with the understanding that the piles are done in X amount of time. What do you figure, a couple of months?
Yeah, the piles will be put right on the lots at the beginning of the construction of the lots.
So by the beginning of December, all that rock will be
I would
gone?
imagine if we can get the lots going by then. That's a month. So if we can get, as long as we get the lots released and some time to work on them.
Okay. Right, so, you understand the motion?
Yeah, let me take a crack at it. Okay, I move to release lots 1, 2, and 3 of Oak Knoll Estates / Old Cart Path, subject to the conditions that the outcropping be
Hammered down
down
to a
and
status that's safe.
to a status that's safe, and the opposite face of the rock also be put in a safe condition, and the stumps be removed, and that's it.
And the roadway be stabilized.
The
to
roadway
show
be stabilized with hydro seeding.
with the understanding that the rocks will be removed by the 1st of December.
Friendly amendment.
So we'll be signing these lot releases based on those contingencies with the right to stop the building if those rocks aren't in place. So first,
You have a second?
a second on that.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
So Betsy, on this lender's agreement, this bond was previously set by the DPW, is that it?
You guys actually voted on March 21st, 2017, that figure of 106,938.
Is this a tri-party agreement?
It is.
Do we have a copy signed by everybody, including the bank?
I do.
All right, in that case, we don't have to vote on that then, so we'll take the form to sign the release for those lots, and you'll be all set, Todd. Just get those few things done, and you can come pick up the form, okay?
Okay.
All right, guys?
And good luck.
We'll sign this and get going. Folks all set? Okay. Keep us informed, okay? You're welcome.
Sign after, or do you want to sign?
We'll sign it now. It's only one form, right?
I've got the lot release form, and then I've got 2 of the tri-party agreements.
Thanks.
Sign where the yellow tabs are, please.
Thank you, kiddo.
Are the folks for Westfield Drive here?
I don't think they're coming. We should be able to, that's pretty easy. We can take care of that after.
Okay.
Is there a place I need to look for my name?
Thank you.
What's that?
Westfield Drive didn't come in with their tri-party agreement, so we can take this up at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Fern Ridge Estates, Mr. Petrosi.
Come on down.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening.
Lou Petrosi for Wall Street Development. I'm here to request a couple of minor modifications to the previously issued special permit for Fern Ridge Estates and the definitive subdivision for Fern Ridge Estates. When I was last here with the board, an issue was brought to my attention that had been an oversight during the process of building the subdivision, and that it had to do with a fee that was included in the special permit relative to managing the open space property. And although the lots were released and the houses are all built, sold, we found out that the board never requested the money and Wall Street never paid the money, and the funds stayed in Wall Street's possession. And also the open space was never conveyed as originally intended. So we're at the process now where we're just about ready to complete the subdivision. Trees were delivered today. Hopefully they'll get planted if it doesn't rain for the next week. And we're getting ready to pave the roadway shortly thereafter, hopefully before the 15th of November or sometime in November, weather permitting. So I've asked the board to consider two things. We've been working with the homeowner that purchased the last lot at the end of the cul-de-sac. He's asked if he could acquire more land. And I approached town administrator to get a feeling as to whether or not he would like to see us be able to avoid any potential disputes regarding the fee and when it was paid or should have been paid. Whether they would consider favorably the carving out an extra acre or so of land, selling it to the neighbor, and paying the town the monies that they've asked for as part of the special permit. So I've asked for these. In order to do that, we need to modify the two permits that were issued, one being the special permit and the second being the subdivision relative to the open space. I've brought with me a sort of a progress print of what it would look like in terms of the piece that we're thinking of carving out. Put that out. The parcel that we're talking about is this parcel C-1, which is, maybe you can help me out and spread that out.
So it's the end of the cul-de-sac.
And it's directly adjacent to his property.
So the guy who wants to buy it is in 9A?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Here's another plan, Michelle. So, with the board's blessings, this plan can be signed as an A&R plan. You know, it has to go through land court and so on and so forth, but, and the modification that we've asked for in the decisions, we can sort of wrap this up, pay the town some monies. And I did ask for a reduction in the amount of money to be paid because I've been sort of maintaining that I've been cutting that detention basin every year, about $800 or $900 a year to cut it. So I've asked for a little bit of reduction in the amount to be paid to the town. So that was my reasoning for the reduced amount.
I thought it was a typo.
Oh, I know, well.
I thought we'd agreed on the full 26,000. I saw 13, it says, wow, it's a typo.
No.
Incidentally, just so I can speak, Lou approached Jack, although it's got nothing to do with Jack, it's this board. And I thought the idea overall was reasonable because the open space plan has extra open space by our percentages required for open space. So we actually, the way his worked out, he gave us more open space. By adopting it and changing the plan with the lesser amount of land, we still are in our regulation requirements for a percentage of open space.
Right.
I thought the neighbor was gonna buy that. He would give us the 26,000 for the open space fee and saved a lot of confusion going down the road. So, and I thought, oh, we're pretty well all set until the typo came and I saw half the money. So I was gonna just suggest to Lou that, me personally, I thought it was a good idea for the whole 26,000 with this plan signed after we get the funding for the open space
yeah, well,
fee. But we can work out the semantics with town council, so everybody, we're handing each thing simultaneously, but
I would need to get the plan signed. It has to go to land court, then I have to make sure it's clear,
yeah, but we can't do that without the funds.
What,
well, it would be contingent upon.
But if we sign the plan, it goes to land court, there's no,
No, it has to
you
be.
could do all that work first, and then bring it
Yeah,
back.
well, it has to, the way I understand it, the way we've done the others is the planning board signs it, goes to land court, then it comes back to the planning board for something else.
You're just gonna have an interim step, because you're gonna adopt the plan of record, you're gonna change it and see if that works, and then come back to us so we can vote on it.
What I was trying to do, well, I'd have to, if you agree to the arrangement,
For the 26.
for the 26.
I knew it was a typo, I knew it.
Well,
is that the
things are
26?
tough.
Is 26 the number?
Yes.
If,
It was $2,000 per lot.
and there are 13 lots.
13 in the open space
Gotcha,
subdivision.
yeah, okay. 13 lots, buildable lots, okay. Times 2 is 20, okay, I got it.
If the board were to agree to the modifications, we'd have to agree on the exchange of the money and the timing of that. I mean,
What I can.
I do know that,
Mhm.
I'd have to be able to convey to the homeowner. Homeowner would have to give us the money and we record it, and I would have to either give the money, a check to you folks that you would hold in escrow or something
Yeah,
like
'cause
that.
before we sign the plan, changing it, vote and sign the plan, we would have to have the funds escrowed.
Yeah.
Because once we sign the plan, everything else is gonna go through.
Maybe I could take up a loan somewhere.
Maybe you could go to the bank and just plead.
We'll see, hopefully by
Yeah, I
that
know.
time, if that were the case, then we'll work out the
semantics is
conditions
fine,
of
yeah.
how to get the money to the town and how to get
You
the
could ask the
closing.
board if they're open to that arrangement.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and as long as the typo was corrected, but other than
Well, I'm a little
that,
bit confused why we even need the first modification.
Well, because you have to, for example, if,
On our document and the open space permit that
Yeah.
was recorded,
Yeah.
it states the amount of land with a copy of the plan. So we have to actually change our permit.
amount of land that will be open space. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
yeah,
right.
there's two,
The amount of money is the same. from the original, it's still 13 lots, right?
We're not talking about the funding. We have, just
the
the
open
special permit
space.
plan, the open space that we
No, I
agreed-
understand this part. I
Yeah.
understand the second. He asked for 2 modifications. I get the second, the open space definitive. I'm in favor of it. I think it makes sense. I don't understand why we need this first modification.
It's when it's paid. So, for example, the original condition was that it was to be paid before the lots are released. Now the lots are released, so now we're agreeing on a different time for when the money is paid.
I see. And you want it to be following the modification of this.
Yeah,
this, and we're saying it needs to be
I think
simultaneous or
We'll do them
or
at the same time.
contiguous
We'll
with,
modify
or-
both at the same time and have the
Well,
money in
if you vote to modify, let's say, tonight, then I would take this plan.
Yeah, but we're not going to vote to modify it tonight.
Okay, so what do we have to
Money.
do? What?
We need the money in escrow. Nothing personal, of course.
No, but it's just,
No vote to
we've
modify.
got a lot of stuff going on.
I understand, so do we. It's 10 o'clock at night. So basically, if we have the money in escrow, I think we can, and you produce the plan for us, we get the vote and the signing kind of easy.
I know, but the transaction takes quite a bit of time, so.
That's why, yeah. So you can just fund the money, put it in escrow, we'll give it to the attorneys, and then we can sign everything, get you on your way.
Okay, I was hoping we'd do it the other way, that you'd
I know that.
just
I-
approve it, and then I'd bring the plan, before you signed it, I would bring the money and the plan in
Yeah, I like
But the
that
money
night.
really has nothing to do with the modification you're asking for.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I can't, there's two things. The reason why we went to administration first with this, because the board said they were gonna leave it up to administration as to how that money, the open space payment was gonna be paid. So that's why I went to,
The money's the
Town
same amount, whether or not it's given before you modify the amount of open space or
no,
not.
I don't think you're understanding.
I guess I'm not.
Because right now, there is no money, because you didn't collect it and I
You
didn't pay it.
Right.
And so there's.
You can still pay it. There's nothing stopping you. There's nothing in our
understand,
rules
but
and regs
why-
that stop you from paying
Why
it.
would I pay it?
Because it,
you owe it.
it's the law.
Well,
It was what was
Wait.
determined.
Again, I don't want to.
So Lou, I think what's gonna happen is, you're gonna, and before you start to do your transacting, you're gonna obviously have to forward the cash yourself, so we can get these things signed, and you can go to the land court and do your thing.
So if I have my attorney send a check to the town that's to be held in escrow pending the signing of this plan,
With the agreement in principle all agreed to and signed off, and we'll leave that to town council, yeah, that's fine,
so you'll have the check, but I get the plan
exactly,
before, so it has to be like a trust issue.
exactly.
We're in the trust tree.
Certified check. Nothing, thank you.
What difference does that have? So in any case, and then
Yeah, I think
hopefully,
that'll work out fine.
I'll be back.
I think that'll work out
for-
fine.
I'll have bond reduction. Now, I did drop off also the as-built, so if there's any issues,
Did Bob get that?
I dropped off.
Very good.
Drop off
So
costs
far,
and
so
stuff.
good, though,
So-
so he's been keeping me abreast anyway,
Yeah,
so we're almost there.
We're
Super.
very close to having everything done.
Very good,
It's
yep.
just gonna rain a lot, so.
I know.
Just, all right, so we'll proceed on good faith basis that's. How we're
Absolutely.
gonna
I mean,
do it,
we'd be
okay?
crazy, I think we'd be crazy not to be
Well,
for that type of
no,
arrangement.
because there's a lot of.
We can
upfront
actually
work.
vote on that arrangement, and then it's not good faith. It's documented as a vote.
Well, that's what I was asking for, if you
And
want
vote
to do
that
that.
once we receive
That
it
would
in
be a
escrow,
little
that
bit
will-
stronger for.
Make a motion
Make a
to
motion
to that effect.
to approve of this contingent on the funds being
Yeah.
paid.
Right. Contingent upon the process that John just laid out in terms of an escrow account and an attorney agreement, then we would, contingent upon that, we do approve the reduction of the open space as per your modification. Just the reduction part of your modification, not the first half, just the second part.
Because you're actually modifying that condition 22 by delivering the funds in escrow, blah, blah, blah. That's
So in
all.
fact, it'll be done.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. In fact, it'll be taken care of.
So who do you want this to, are you referring, using an attorney to do this?
So
or-
hold on, I have a motion on the
Who's
table.
town council these days?
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle
Oh,
has
go
a
ahead.
motion, so.
All right, well, would you mind repeating that?
Oh, come on, you gotta make me do it again. It's a 3-time thing.
I don't know. You're ever bad luck with these motions.
A move that contingent upon the receipt of funds in escrow and an attorney-approved agreement of $26,000 for open space, that then the planning board will then approve the modification to reduce the amount of open space at Fern Ridge as per the modification presented to us.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thanks very much.
Okay.
When's your next meeting anyways? Okay, so we have time. We've got a whole month to do stuff. All right, thanks very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Lou.
Thank you.
Come again.
Good night, Lou.
Maybe we can do a bond reduction too.
Hey, you keep holding up your end of the bargain, it works out pretty good.
Yeah, you're on a roll.
The trees are in. Let's get those trees
Yeah,
in.
exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Night.
Good night, Lou.
All right, so we have no Westfield Drive. Next, I am going to recuse myself, and Greg will have to too, as he's in a butter. I'm having a...
Knoll Drive or Keeney?
Keeney Farm.
Oh, we're skipping 7 Knoll Drive?
Don't we have the,
Oh, that's the one, what, don't we have 7 Knoll
don't we
Drive?
have this one
Yeah, we'll
first?
do that after.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, okay.
I need a break. So basically, we have on the town warrant 3 roadways to be accepted, and I have a letter from Bob McGee showing the as-built have been planned, reviewed, approved, and he noted that all the work has been done, and there's a letter in there okaying the bond release for those 3 roadways that are going at town meeting.
Yeah, Betsy, do you have those letters so the board could look at those?
Yep, you should have
in our
copies in your
packet.
packet.
We should, huh? Oh, yes, here they are. Okay. These guys here, right?
I'll take it there were no discrepancies.
Look at the second one, yeah, second letter. It's actually page 2 of the package, I think. You can see what the inspection list was.
And if I could just clarify one thing, one of the bonds included in the $204,000 amount covered the bounds of Castle Road and a little bit on Wright Farm Road, which isn't part of the approval. So what we did was we voided out that bond that covered both roadways, and Bob has a new bond there for that part of Wright Farm Road, which is station 1300 to 1565. That was included in the old bond, so we reestablished the amount for that section. It's not a town meeting approval.
So as I read this, we're gonna need 2 motions. We're gonna need one motion to, to release the $204,000 bond, and another one to establish the $17,000 bond.
I'm going to motion to approve the warrant article for the roadway acceptance.
So the 3 motions, okay, yeah, all right.
Is the warrant article in here too? Haven't gotten this far yet.
No, you don't have the warrant article. We've already gone to town council, the town administrator.
So how do we approve it if we haven't seen it?
Wait a
Not
minute.
approving, well,
You're approving the warrant, you're approving the acceptance, the roadways to be accepted.
I can show you the articles in 3 days. I think it's actually pretty much.
You know what article it is?
These are, there's just 3 articles for the acceptance of the roadways.
I thought I had it, but I don't.
What are you looking for, Walter?
Nothing, it's the 3 articles. Let me take a quick look at it. Okay, I got it. Kevin, you want to look at the articles?
Yeah, as soon as she's done, I'll take a look.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it sounds like what Bob is saying, that Castle Road, Meeting House Road, and Wild Holly Lane are 100% complete. The as-built were found to be acceptable. It's just Wright's Farm. Getting that right?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, want me to get started?
So you ready to go, Kev?
Yep.
All right, so the first motion, I think, should be to approve the articles in the town warrant for the acceptance of Wild Holly Lane, Castle Road, and Meeting House Road.
Second? I seconded.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we now need a motion from one of you to release the bond, the $204,000 bond.
So we move to release bond of $204,237.
For Castle House Road, Meeting House Road, Wright's Farm Road, and Wild Holly Lane.
Yep.
To zero, yeah.
Total bond reduction.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the third would be to vote to establish a new bond in the amount of $17,086 to reflect incomplete cost to complete work at Wright's Farm Road, Station 1300 to 156432.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those lots for that Wright Farm Road have already been accepted and bonded.
Okay. Done.
Yeah.
I gotta visit the little boy. Take your time.
So when you guys have time, I have the street acceptance mylars for your endorsement there.
Mr. Petrosi.
How much is he going to get for 1.2 acres of extra land?
Well, if you can believe him, he told me he's getting 40,000. You know what the fact of the matter is? When people about open space normally, and you saw the little wedge, normally they make that their own.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was a real nice arrangement for where we stood. And I didn't think he would acquiesce as he did. Normally it's, I saw that email for half price, and I go, yeah, here we go again. I thought this was, interesting.
Even the rationale was interesting. Well, I've spent all in total,
He
maybe
kno-
2,000 or 3,000 over the
And
last
that's
few
why-
years, so that's reduced it by 13,000.
Which is what we had to tell him it was certified funds.
You have to make it an issue of trust, but you just sat here and asked us why
Well,
you should pay the fees.
I would never even let you folks vote unless the money was in hand.
Yeah. Were the costs that he was talking about that he's incurred over the last couple of years, were those even costs that would have been associated to the funds that were paid at the beginning, before the lots were? No.
Well, so what he's saying is that he's maintained the drainage open space, and had he turned that over to the town, that,
Oh, so
you know,
he's
when
been-
he did, that would have been cost the town would have accrued, but he said it was maybe $1,000 a year. It's only been a few years, so
Well, we've walked-
maybe $3,000.
We've walked that woods, no one's been out in those woods.
And any changes he's done to the drainage basin is to replace landscaping that failed or improper landscaping that he planted. He hasn't been,
I'm just happy we're moving on.
even if you gave him the benefit of the doubt and said you put $3,000 of maintenance, that would have been the town's cost. How does that absolve you of $13,000
Right.
of cost?
You know, you just have to sift through what you need to do, what you need to hear, and then move forward, and the rest is just all fluff. All set, Walter?
Yep.
So we had a revised landscape plan for Seven Knoll Drive. It was never submitted when they had their estate lot. They're required by the special permit to submit the final landscape plan after they had their septic design, et cetera. And somebody informed Betsy that it was never received, so they have put together a plan for us and submitted it for our approval, which is part of the open space plan. I've actually been down to Knoll Drive, it's near me, and they did a real good job putting in the driveway and leaving as much natural as they could, so I don't see any butters here, so I would guess that they're probably happy too.
So are there any requirements that this landscape plan is supposed to be meeting?
No, there was no fixed requirement, just that we had a okay.
Just so we have a plan?
Exactly.
So they've met the requirement simply by submitting a plan?
Yes.
So it's nothing really to vote on?
Exactly, no, there's nothing to vote on.
Well, we can vote, but there's nothing really to comment on.
No.
Is this house built at this point?
Oh, yeah. Very nicely.
Okay.
That squeaks. All right, so last,
So do we have to move to accept it, or?
I don't think so.
No?
It's just a requirement for the
Okay.
permit, so I would say we're fine.
Okay.
So, associate member, we interviewed the week you weren't here, Michelle, the
Yep.
meeting you weren't here.
Yep.
3 different members, all good. We're lucky we had 3 to choose
I
from.
know, it's amazing. What a
And,
abundance.
You saw the
did.
agencies, so I'll open up to comments from you folks, and whoever we decide to vote on would technically go to a selectman vote, but if we have the number of votes, that's what's gonna,
So it's a
The-
combination of selectmen and planning board votes?
it's a joint
It's a
vote.
joint appointment.
And it doesn't have to be a certain amount, it's just majority? Got
So
it.
if we vote, we,
And it's usually, the selectmen will accept our recommendation, since it's our board that deals with that individual.
Got it.
You didn't get a chance to meet any of these folks?
I didn't, but I watched the interviews actually twice.
Oh, you did? Okay.
She watched them twice.
Twice, huh?
Well, I was watching the night that I wasn't feeling well, so I thought it was only fair to watch it again, because I wasn't feeling well. But I kind of came up with, as I was listening to the conversation, tried to establish some objective criteria, because we have more than one candidate, which is, again, such an abundance and such a gift that we have a choice and we have criteria to evaluate against. And you're right, they were all excellent candidates and really, really wonderful enthusiasm. So I came up with a few things to sort of evaluate, and one was, the question of why do you want to join the planning board? And I thought across the board, all 3 were really well qualified. I liked their answers, I liked their reasons, I liked their motivation, giving back to the community, representing neighbor needs, monitoring the growth of our town. The second was experience or technical knowledge, and I felt that, is it Devin? Is that his name?
the engineer.
Yep, had some really great experience in both on another board, as well as technical knowledge, as well as Aaron. Less so Jim, although you had, a lot of interest, but not as much of the technical experience that the others brought. And then the last criteria I was looking at was sort of long-term commitment. Not that that's, a requirement, but since we have a choice.
It's helpful.
Again, since we have a choice, it's like, why
Sure.
not try, see how many boxes we can check. And obviously Jim and Aaron met that criteria best. So I think the one candidate that, from my perspective, kind of checked all the boxes was Aaron. That's where I landed.
Yeah, I support that, and that was my conclusion as well. I thought the the fellow who was already on one board was doing quite well until he said he was only going to be around for a year and a half, and kind of, I don't know how many toes he's got left on his foot, but he's shooting them off.
Well, I appreciated his honesty, though.
Yeah,
you know?
well, yes, you do, indeed, but still.
It is good, yeah, I agree.
Still, I mean, for the long term, the assumption is that the associate member at some point will become a full member, or
Right.
certainly
Right.
down the road.
Right. But if we didn't have a choice, I'd take someone even for a year, right? So.
Well, yes, indeed, sure, but since we do have a
Yes,
choice.
exactly, that's the point, since we have the choice.
I would support Aaron.
I mean, there definitely was an appeal to having somebody who's tied into the ZBA to make a connection.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure.
Sure.
I thought that was a great point to support Devin. But Aaron having his experience on the design review board and being familiar with the processes and the rules and regs and all those kind of things is, I think, a little bit more appealing.
I mean, it's all been said. I mean, I concur with everybody's opinion. I just wanted to, I think there's still, you still have opening positions on the Conservation Commission, right, John?
Yes, we do.
So I just wanted to make a note of that for, any of the candidates that were hoping to be on the planning board, that I would encourage them to talk to John about the Conservation Commission. And so I think we're all in a relative agreement. So if you want to, do we have to make any kind of a motion to recommend?
Yes.
No, we're voting to,
Each individual has to vote, right?
yeah, we're not voting to recommend because it's. Unless someone can associate position.
Make that vote unless we were with the selectmen in the same room?
No.
But I think we.
No, that was for the
This is
special
joint-
election to make me a full member.
Oh, was it for that one?
This is a joint appointment with the selectmen.
Yeah.
So we send them our.
That's all.
Our recommendation or our.
No, our vote, we send them our vote.
Right. We can place our vote, but it's not a final appointment
Right.
until the.
Unless
And
you,
they'll go along with what you
unless you do
guys-
math.
Yeah, they.
Yeah.
If one person chooses 5 votes, then there's nothing the selectmen would be able to do.
They normally just pick who we choose.
Might just even for
basically.
the record though, want to, Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
There's
understand a
strong
motion?
feeling, strong objection.
Yes.
I move to offer the position as associate member to the planning board to Aaron Hunt.
Second. Anybody?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aaron's on. Jim, like I mentioned to you, we'd love to have you on the Conservation Commission. And your background lines up a little bit better on that, especially with the soil background, which is right up the line. So hopefully you will notify Jack Hathaway that you're interested.
Okay, so then just need to send the application to, or a letter to the selectmen?
Just an email to saying that you'd like to be considered for the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
And I'm sure they'll have you on their meeting again, I don't know, next week. So just do it as soon as you can, yeah. Thanks for coming in, Jim, I
Yeah, thanks for
appreciate
your
it.
interest.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep coming to
Thank
the
you for
meetings.
volunteering, regardless of how it came out. Thank you for volunteering.
Anybody else before we close out?
I got something else, yeah?
Okay,
Just one set
Walter.
of meeting minutes, the August 23rd meeting minutes, which.
Yep,
guys
you
have.
want to do that? Before I get to my item?
We didn't have any changes, correct?
There was an extra M in there, and I deleted that, so good to go, Walter.
Yeah. Walter 3, Kevin 0. I'm gonna get there eventually.
I'm not keeping score, Kevin.
As long as it gets done.
All right, I move to accept the minutes for Wednesday, August 23rd.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, Walter.
Yeah, as we all know, we met with the selectmen and approved the housing production plan. Grab one and pass it on. And pass these down to these folks. And the first three action items that come off the list on that thing fall in the lap of the planning board. And two of the three talk about creating design guidelines, one for the town center and the other for a potential multi-family development or multi-unit development, which might be put somewhere in town. So I thought it would be good to move the ball along a little bit by requesting that our design review board come up with a draft of these design guidelines, which they could bring to us and explain, and we could discuss and argue back and forth and come up with a set and at least keep it moving.
And we don't have any design guidelines?
We do have design guidelines. They have design guidelines, but they are for, don't forget, the design review reviews site plan commercial projects. Technically, remember we had a little issue a year or so ago that they wanted to chirp in on a residential project, and technically our zoning does not
allow them to do
allow
that,
them
yeah.
to. But they have designs, guidelines for the commercial, such as that it fits into the theme of the town, simulated divided windows, which they normally waive, color choices and things like that. Roof lines and that.
Heights.
So where they're gonna,
Did
did we change the bylaws to have them vote on multifamily projects yet?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
So
because I thought
another-
that was one that we were gonna
Another
be
way to do
doing.
it would be design guidelines, for commercial or anything within this, the B1 district or the
Yes.
B1 and the B2
Sure.
district. So regardless of the property type, if it falls in a certain
Sure.
area of town,
Yeah, we could do that.
they could have that same purview.
Yeah,
Right.
we could do that, sure.
Right.
Makes sense.
I think it's a good idea. And the other ones that, have the expertise to do it, one of them will be an associate member on our board now, so,
Yeah.
we get the feedback.
Yeah,
we
but I think
need.
largely it's more of a vote at town meeting to make the rules apply just to a broader
Right.
perspective.
Give them more jurisdiction.
Exactly.
Either way, they're, as I've mentioned, they don't have any definitive say. Their only responsibility is to bring things to us so that
They're
we can
advisory.
choose.
Yep.
Which basically reminds me, if you folks have any time, take a look at the color samples there, mainly you, Michelle, and you could choose a color for that building that works, okay?
Walter, correct me if I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, Walter, but wasn't the idea behind this initiative that we would put some guidelines into place to make it a more attractive process for somebody proposing a plan to town, so that they would know what to come with to start, as
Exactly.
opposed to feeling like they'd be opening up the process to get feedback, go back and forth?
Right, it would save a step or two.
Right.
Exactly. And make it more attractive for someone to say, hey, they know what they're doing, they know what they want, let's see if we can comply with it up front. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So,
I think, so are the guidelines that we currently have, even though they're just for commercial, seen as non-developer friendly? Because I don't think they are at all either.
No, and many times,
And so I think the point is, if we already have a pretty clear vision, they could possibly use a little bit rounding out, but it's just a matter of applying that vision to a broader,
I'm unclear as to whether the existing guidelines are written down.
They are. I've actually read them, aren't they, Gino? The design guidelines that the
I know
design
what you're
review
talking
goes by?
about.
I know that.
Probably.
I know that.
I haven't- I don't remember
well,
seeing them.
I don't remember seeing
I
that
know
either.
specifically
Doesn't mean
because
that
we've
they aren't
been
written
waiving
down, but-
simulated divided windows for everybody because they're so expensive. But when you look at a building like Silla's goes probably against every design guideline we have. It is contemporary. It's contemporary windows. They're not paned.
Yeah.
It has different colors that certainly aren't considered historical colonial colors. So it's something that's been like loosely controlled,
Right.
well, again, they are guidelines. They're
guidelines.
not a zoning or building permit, requirement.
Right,
So
right.
with that, they can be loosely
Right.
controlled.
On the other hand, if someone complies with the spirit of the design guidelines, they generally get a a warmer welcome at the table than someone who comes in with a modern design or something and wants to plunk it down in the middle of the B1 district.
Right.
You know, so wait a minute.
Exactly.
Depends on how beautiful that modern is. No, I'm just.
Yeah.
You want to get Moshe Safdie to put a building in downtown Norfolk? That might be a nice thing.
So how do we move this along, John?
Why don't you
What do
make the contact? Is Bob back yet?
Yeah, he should be.
Why
I
don't
haven't
you-
talked to him,
why
but he
don't
should
you-
be.
So sort of
Why don't you
find
make
the
the
written,
contact
see
with
if
him?
he can
Just see if he
find what's written, and then, and does it need, further embellishment? And then how do we broaden it? And I
Okay.
think the broadening it would come to our purview. We'd have to vote on that as either
Yes.
a town warrant article or a zoning
Well,
thing
we'd
or
first have to
something.
approve the things that they're suggesting
We
and,
should,
and fine tune it, and then it would go for our town meeting vote.
Right.
Okay, so I will approach Bob.
Yeah,
and
that'd be great.
Good, okay.
Motion to adjourn, we're all set?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.